The sound of a car horn, long and desperate, cuts through the humid air. You are in your car, but you are not moving. Around you, a sea of metal and glass, shimmering under the weight of the afternoon sun. Another horn joins the first, then another, a meaningless chorus of frustration. You feel a familiar tightness in your chest, a hot wire of irritation pulling at your temples. Your hand tightens on the steering wheel, your thumb mindlessly swiping at the screen of your phone, searching the map for an escape route that you know, deep down, does not exist. Every minute that ticks by feels like a personal failure, a loss of precious time you can never get back. You are trapped, and every fiber of your being is screaming for a way to take back control. This scene, this feeling of being utterly stuck, is a perfect miniature of our modern existence. It's not just about the traffic. It's about the project at work that isn't going according to plan, the relationship that feels uncertain, the number on the scale that won't budge, the carefully curated image online that feels exhausting to maintain. We live in an age that worships control. We are sold planners, apps, and life hacks, all promising that with enough effort, enough strategy, we can orchestrate our lives into a perfect symphony of success and happiness. We build walls of routine and expectation, hoping to keep out the chaos and uncertainty of the world. Yet, the anxiety remains. The stress accumulates. The moments of genuine peace feel fleeting, like brief clearings in a perpetual storm. We are engaged in a constant, draining war with reality, trying to force it into the shape of our desires. And it is an unwinnable war. But what if the entire premise is wrong? What if the fight itself is the source of our suffering? What if true power is not found in bending the world to our will, but in the quiet courage to let the world be as it is? Imagine, for a moment, a different path, a path that doesn't offer more tools for control, but instead teaches the art of surrender, an ancient wisdom that suggests freedom isn't found in getting everything you want, but in finding peace even when you don't. This is the philosophy that lies at the heart of the Buddhist tradition. It is not a call to passivity, but a profound invitation to a different kind of engagement with life, an invitation to shift from the exhausting task of trying to control everything to the liberating practice of truly experiencing everything. It is a journey from the constricted fist of resistance to the open hand of acceptance, where we might just find the peace we have been searching for all along. We begin our journey by looking directly at the architect of our own disquiet, the invisible force that directs so much of our energy and so much of our anxiety. It is the deep, persistent, and profoundly human obsession with control. This is the unwinnable war we wage every single day, a battle fought not on some distant field, but within the quiet landscapes of our own minds and hearts. It is the silent assumption that the world is a chaotic manuscript, and it is our job to edit it into perfection. We believe that if we just plan meticulously enough, work hard enough, and anticipate every possibility, we can impose a lasting order on the inherent messiness of life. We see ourselves as the conductors of a grand orchestra, and we become agitated and distressed when the violins of our relationships play out of tune, or the percussion of our career takes on a rhythm we did not write. This desire is not, in itself, a moral failing. It is a deeply ingrained survival mechanism, a legacy of our ancestors, who needed to control their immediate environment to stay alive. But in our modern world, this once useful instinct has hypertrophied. It has grown into a source of chronic, low-grade suffering, a constant hum of tension beneath the surface of our lives, because we have aimed it at things that were never meant to be controlled. To understand why this obsession has such a powerful grip on us, we must first look into the psychological soil where it grows. The first and deepest root is fear. Specifically, it is the fear of the unknown. The human brain is a magnificent prediction engine. It constantly scans the past and present to build a model of the future, because a predictable world is a safe world. Uncertainty, therefore, registers as a threat. The open-ended question of tomorrow, the sheer unpredictability of the next hour, can feel intolerable. And so, we try to colonize the future with our plans. We create 5-year goals, detailed to-do lists, and rigid expectations for how events should unfold. These plans act as a psychological balm, a way to soothe our fear of the void. We tell ourselves a story about the future, a story in which we are the protagonist and we are in charge. The problem, of course, is that life is a notoriously poor co-author. It rarely follows our script, and when the plot deviates, when the unexpected occurs, our carefully constructed defense against fear crumbles, leaving us feeling exposed, betrayed, and even more afraid than before. This personal fear is then amplified by the immense pressure of the society we live in. From our earliest years, we are fed a narrative that equates control with maturity and success. We are taught to take charge, to make things happen, to be the masters of our own destiny. The cultural heroes we celebrate are often those who seem to have wrestled reality into submission, the entrepreneurs and visionaries who bent the world to their will. This creates an implicit, and sometimes explicit, expectation that a well-lived life is a well-controlled life. Failure to control our career trajectory, our finances, or even our emotions is often perceived as a personal weakness, a character flaw. This leads to a profound sense of shame when things inevitably fall apart. We don't just feel disappointed, we feel that we, ourselves, are a disappointment. We have failed at the one task society told us was most important. And at the very core of this struggle is the ego, what in Buddhism is sometimes called the sense of a separate, solid I. This I is not a static thing, but a story we continually tell ourselves. It is a construct built from our memories, our titles, our possessions, and our beliefs. And like any construct, it seeks to reinforce its own existence. The ego thrives on agency. It solidifies its sense of self by being the one who does, the one who chooses, the one who directs. The act of controlling the world outside validates the story of the powerful I inside. Therefore, a loss of control is not just an inconvenience, it is an existential threat to the ego. When we are stuck in traffic, when a loved one makes a choice we disagree with, when we get a negative health diagnosis, the ego feels itself begin to dissolve. It panics. The foundation of its identity is shaken, and this feels terrifying, like a small death. The war for control is, at its heart, the ego's desperate war for its own survival. Herein lies the great and tragic irony of this entire endeavor. The more we tighten our grip on the external world, the more we lose control of our internal world. Our peace of mind becomes conditional, entirely dependent on things outside of ourselves. If the project succeeds, we feel a fleeting sense of calm. If it fails, we are plunged into despair. If our partner behaves as we wish, we feel secure. If they assert their own autonomy, we are consumed by jealousy and fear. We become a puppet, and the strings are held by the very people and circumstances we are trying to command. Our emotional state is no longer our own. It is a hostage to the whims of a world that is, by its very nature, unpredictable and untamable. In our frantic effort to manage everything around us, we abdicate the management of the one thing we might actually have some influence over, our own mind. There is an old story that perfectly illustrates this human predicament. It is the story of a man who decided that the ocean was simply too unruly. He was a man of great determination and modern sensibilities. He went down to the shore with the finest, most powerful steam iron he could find. His goal was simple: to flatten the waves, to press the entire ocean into a single, placid sheet of glass. He plugged his iron into a long extension cord and set to work. He would find a small swell, a rising wave, and with great effort, he would press the hot iron against it. There would be a great hiss of steam, a momentary smoothing, but the moment he lifted the iron, the wave would reform, and another would be right behind it, and another, and another. He worked all day, his frustration growing with each passing hour. The ocean did not care. It was not angry with him, nor was it trying to defy him. It was simply being what it is, a vast, powerful, and ever-changing body of water. The man, in his desperate attempt to impose his will, saw the ocean's nature as a personal affront. He ended the day exhausted, defeated, and soaked, while the ocean continued its eternal rhythm, utterly indifferent to his heroic and utterly absurd efforts. We are all, in our own way, this man with the steam iron. Our careers, our relationships, our bodies, our emotions, these are our oceans. And our plans, our expectations, our anxieties, these are our irons. We press and we struggle, and we only create more steam, more noise, more exhaustion for ourselves. Our contemporary world has become a grand emporium for selling us ever more sophisticated irons. We are surrounded by what could be called the gospel of productivity. We are offered an endless stream of digital tools that promise to bring order to our lives. Calendars that schedule every minute, apps that track every calorie, platforms that manage every project. We are encouraged to hustle, a word that glorifies a state of constant, forward-moving agitation. This culture creates a powerful illusion of control. We feel that by tracking and quantifying every aspect of our existence, we are somehow mastering it. But what is often happening is the reverse. The tools begin to control us. The calendar becomes a tyrant, its notifications a source of constant pressure. The email inbox becomes a relentless river of demands that we feel compelled to answer at all hours. We are not achieving a state of calm command. We are simply becoming more efficient administrators of our own self-imposed stress. We have more data, more charts, more metrics, but less peace. And so, we arrive at the foundational truth that this obsession with control attempts to deny. The truth is that control itself is the illusion. Life is not a machine to be operated, but a force to be experienced. We cannot control the weather, the economy, the aging of our bodies, or the innermost thoughts and feelings of another human being. We can influence things, yes. We can act with skill and wisdom, but the ultimate outcome is never, ever, entirely in our hands. The only thing we have any real sovereignty over is the attitude and the intention we bring to each moment. We can choose how we respond to the traffic jam. We can choose how we speak to our partner. We can choose how we face our fears. This is the only domain where our control is real. The rest is a grand and humbling mystery. This understanding naturally leads us to a deeper, more fundamental question. If our desperate attempts at control are so futile, if reality is so resistant to being ironed flat, then what is its true nature? Why is the ocean so resolutely an ocean? To find the answer, we must be willing to look at the world not as we wish it to be, but as it actually is. We must turn our attention to the most basic, observable, and often overlooked law of existence, a truth that ancient wisdom captured in a single, powerful, and ultimately liberating word. The reason our war against reality is so unwinnable, the reason our irons can never flatten the ocean, is because the very fabric of existence is woven from the thread of change. The ancient Buddhist teachers had a word for this fundamental truth, anicca. In the Pali language, it simply means impermanence, or not, constant. To the Western ear, conditioned to seek stability, security, and permanence, this word can sound like a death knell. It can conjure feelings of nihilism, hopelessness, and dread. It seems to confirm our deepest fear, that nothing lasts, and therefore, nothing matters. But this is a profound misunderstanding of one of the most liberating insights into the nature of reality. Anicca is not a flaw in the system, it is the system. The truth of impermanence is not a curse. It is the key that unlocks the prison of our own expectations. It is the beginning of wisdom, and the foundation upon which any genuine peace must be built. It tells us that reality is not a static photograph, but a flowing river. And our suffering does not come from the fact that the river flows, but from our frantic and futile attempt to build a dam in the middle of it. To truly grasp this, we must see that anicca is not an abstract philosophical concept. It is the most practical, observable fact of our lives. Look at your own body. The person you see in the mirror today is not the same person who was there 10 years ago, or even yesterday. Billions of cells have died and been replaced. Your body is not a fixed entity, but a slow-motion event, a process of continual renewal and decay. Look at your thoughts. Try to hold on to a single thought for even 1 minute. You cannot. The mind is a waterfall of ideas, images, and internal chatter, one thought dissolving to make way for the next in an endless cascade. And look at your emotions. The searing anger you felt yesterday, where is it now? The profound joy of a past celebration, can you feel it with the same intensity? Emotions are like weather patterns, clouds that drift across the sky of our awareness. They arise, they linger for a time, and then, inevitably, they pass. Everything we experience, from the monumental shifts in our lives to the subtle sensations in our bodies, is marked by this same transient nature. Nothing is exempt. The core of our human suffering, what the Buddha called dukkha, arises directly from our resistance to this truth. We live as though things are permanent, and then we are shocked and wounded when they prove not to be. We fall in love and cling to the initial, intoxicating phase of a relationship, wanting it to last forever. When the relationship naturally evolves and deepens into something different, something quieter, we mistake this change for a loss, and we suffer. We achieve a moment of success, a promotion at work, and we cling to the feeling of pride and security it gives us. When the next challenge arises, or someone else gets the spotlight, we feel diminished and afraid. We experience a moment of perfect, simple happiness, perhaps watching a sunset or laughing with a friend, and a part of our mind immediately says, "I wish this would never end." That very thought, that subtle act of clinging, poisons the moment itself. We are no longer fully present for the sunset. We are already mourning its future absence. This clinging is like clenching your fist around a handful of water. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes through your fingers. The suffering is not the water's nature to flow. The suffering is the tension in your clenched fist. The problem is not that life changes, but that we demand it stays the same. There is a story from the Buddhist scriptures that illustrates this journey from resistance to acceptance more powerfully than any abstract explanation. It is the story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She lived a happy life, and her greatest joy was her young son. But one day, tragedy struck, and the boy fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami was consumed by a grief so absolute that her mind refused to accept reality. She believed her son was merely sick, and she clutched his small, lifeless body to her chest, going from house to house, begging everyone she met for medicine that could cure him. The villagers looked at her with pity, some with scorn, telling her the boy was gone and she should let him go. But she could not hear them. Her grief was a wall that blocked out the truth. Finally, a wise man, seeing her desperation, suggested she go see the Buddha. Carrying her son, she ran to the enlightened one and pleaded, "Can you make a medicine that will cure my boy?" The Buddha looked at her, not with judgment for her delusion, but with infinite compassion for her pain. He said to her, "Yes, I can make such a medicine, but to do so, I require one ingredient. You must go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a spouse, a parent, or a friend." Kisa Gotami's heart soared with hope. A single mustard seed. It was such a simple thing. She went to the first house and knocked. "The Buddha has sent me for a mustard seed to make a medicine for my son," she said. The woman of the house replied, "Of course, I have plenty of seeds." But as she was about to hand them over, Kisa Gotami remembered the Buddha's condition. "Has anyone in this house ever died?" she asked. The woman's face fell. "Oh, child," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. Do not remind me of my deepest grief. I lost my husband just last year." Kisa Gotami left the mustard seed and went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same at every door. "I can give you the seed, but my parents are gone. Please, take the seed. But we buried our youngest child in the spring. You are welcome to the seed, but our family has known loss for generations." She went through the entire village, and she could not find a single household untouched by the hand of death. As the sun began to set, she sat down by the roadside, exhausted. The profound truth of her search began to dawn on her. She had thought her grief was a unique, isolating agony, a terrible punishment inflicted only upon her. Now she saw it in every home, in every face. She realized that death was not a personal tragedy, but a universal condition of life itself. The wall of her personal sorrow crumbled, and in its place rose a vast, connecting understanding. In that moment, she was no longer fighting reality. She gently laid her son's body down, and the healing of her heart began. Kisa Gotami did not get the medicine she thought she wanted, but she received the wisdom she truly needed. She learned the lesson of anicca, not as a theory, but as a lived, shared, and ultimately compassionate truth. This understanding invites us to become gentle observers of our own lives, to practice seeing impermanence not as a threat, but simply as what is. You can do this in any moment. When you feel a strong emotion, like anxiety, Instead of fighting it or identifying with it completely, you can just notice it. There is anxiety. I feel a tightness in my chest, a quickening of my breath. You observe it as a weather pattern passing through you. You don't have to become the storm. You can be the sky that holds the storm, knowing it will pass. This is learning to ride the waves. A master surfer doesn't command the ocean. She doesn't get angry at a big wave or sad when a small one passes. She studies the rhythm of the water, respects its power, and aligns herself with its energy. In the same way, we can learn to align ourselves with the natural, flowing energy of life. We can meet joy with gratitude, not with a desperate grasp. We can meet sorrow with compassion, not with panicked resistance. We are no longer trying to stop the river, but learning how to navigate it with grace and skill. We have seen then that our external world, from our relationships to our careers, is in constant flux. And we have seen that our internal world, our thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations, is also a ceaseless flow. The very foundation of our experience is change. Control is a futile effort because there is nothing solid or lasting to hold on to. Everything we try to grasp is like a fistful of smoke, but this leads to an even more profound and unsettling question. If everything is changing, what about the one who is doing the experiencing? What about the I that feels the joy and sorrow? The I that witnesses the thoughts? The I that so desperately wants to be in control? In this universe of constant flux, is this I the one fixed and permanent entity? To continue our journey, we must turn our curious and courageous gaze inward, to investigate the nature of the controller itself. We have stood at the edge of the river of existence and acknowledged its unceasing flow. We have accepted, intellectually at least, that everything we perceive is impermanent, marked by the universal truth of Anicca. But as we watch this current of change, a persistent question arises, a question that points to the very heart of our identity. Who is it that is watching this river? Who is this I that feels joy when the waters are calm and fear when they are turbulent? Who is the controller, the feeler, the thinker, the one who so desperately wants to build a dam? We assume there is a solid, continuous self at our core, a chief executive in the headquarters of our mind. The next step on this path of inquiry asks us to turn the lens of our investigation upon this assumed self, and what it reveals is perhaps the most radical, challenging, and ultimately liberating insight in the entire Buddhist tradition. It is the teaching of anatta, or non-self. This is not a declaration that you do not exist. You are clearly here, hearing these words. Rather, it is a profound re-examination of how you exist. It suggests that you are not a static noun, but a dynamic verb. You are not a thing, but a process. The house of the self, when we inspect it closely, is found to be empty of any permanent owner. To understand this, we must be willing to deconstruct what we call ourself. According to this ancient psychology, our sense of self is a composite, a bundle of 5 distinct, ever-changing processes, known as the 5 aggregates. Imagine them as a committee that runs the organization called you. First, there is form. This is your physical body, the flesh, bones, and blood. As we have seen, this is clearly impermanent. It grows, ages, gets sick, and heals. It is a river of biological processes, not a solid statue. So, you are not your body, because your body is always changing. The second committee member is feeling. This is not complex emotion, but the raw, immediate sensation of experience as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The warmth of the sun on your skin is pleasant. The sound of a drill next door is unpleasant. The feeling of your clothes against your arm might be neutral. These feelings arise, they are felt, and they vanish, replaced by the next one. They are like fleeting guests. You are not your feelings, because they are constantly coming and going. Third is perception. This is the faculty that recognizes, identifies, and labels. It sees a collection of colors and shapes and says, that is a tree. It hears a sequence of notes and says, that is a sad song. Our perceptions are deeply conditioned by our past experiences, our language, our culture, and our mood. Two people can look at the exact same event and perceive it in completely different ways. Perception is a biased and unreliable narrator, not a stable, objective self. Fourth, and this is a vast and busy category, are the mental formations. This includes all of our thoughts, opinions, beliefs, biases, memories, habits, and intentions. This is the chatterbox of the mind, the part that plans, worries, judges, and desires. This is where the impulse to control is born. I need to get that promotion. I wish she would call me back. That was a stupid thing to say. We tend to identify most strongly with this category, believing our thoughts are who we are. But if you watch your mind for even a moment, you will see that thoughts arise unbidden and disappear just as quickly. They are mental weather, not the sky itself. You are not your thoughts, because they too are impermanent. Finally, the fifth member is consciousness. This is the fundamental quality of awareness, the light that allows all the other aggregates to be known. There is seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, tasting consciousness, and thinking consciousness. But this awareness is not a standalone monolithic thing. It arises in dependence upon an object. Eye consciousness arises when an eye and a form come together. It is not a permanent soul or spirit that looks out from behind your eyes. It is more like the light in a room. It illuminates the furniture, but it is not the furniture, and it depends on a source of power. When the conditions cease, the light ceases. So, here is the conclusion of the investigation. If the body is not a permanent self, if feelings are not a permanent self, if perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness are not a permanent self, then how can the combination of these five fleeting, interdependent processes be a permanent self? It cannot. The self we cherish and defend is like a rainbow, a beautiful phenomenon that appears when certain conditions of light and water are present, but with no inherent substance of its own. There is a famous dialogue from an ancient text that makes this point beautifully. A Greco-Bactrian king named Milinda, a man of great intelligence and worldly power, sought out a Buddhist sage named Nagasena to challenge him in debate. The king, confident in his identity, asked the sage his name. Nagasena replied that he was known as Nagasena, but this was only a name, a convenient designation. For in ultimate reality, there was no permanent person to be found there. The king was astounded and amused. He thought he had found a flaw in the sage's logic. He gestured to the chariot he had arrived in. "Venerable sir," the king began, "if there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes and takes this food? Let's talk about your chariot. Is the main pole of the chariot the chariot?" "No, your majesty," said Nagasena. "Are the wheels the chariot?" "No, your majesty." The king continued, listing every part: the axle, the frame, the yoke, the reins. Each time, Nagasena answered no. Then the king said triumphantly, "Is the chariot something else, separate from all these parts?" "No, your majesty," Nagasena replied calmly. "Then I must conclude, sir, that you are lying. There is no chariot." At this point, Nagasena turned the tables. He said, "Your majesty, you are a great king. You have walked here on fine carpets and are accustomed to the shade of the midday sun. Is the heat the king? No, sir. Is your body the king? Number." Nagasena then proceeded to deconstruct the king himself, using the five aggregates. He asked if his feelings were the king, his perceptions, his thoughts, his consciousness. To each, the king had to answer no. Nagasena concluded, "Then just as chariot is a convenient name we give to the temporary arrangement of wheels, axle, and frame, so Milinda is a convenient name for the temporary arrangement of the five aggregates. When the parts are taken apart, the chariot disappears. When we look closely at our experience, the solid self cannot be found." The king, a wise man, understood. He had seen the illusion. This understanding is not merely a dry intellectual exercise. It is the key to a profound liberation, especially from the tyranny of control. Think about it. The very reason we feel the need to control is because of the illusion of a separate, vulnerable self. This ego feels small and fragile in a big, unpredictable world. To protect itself, it starts to build a fortress. Its possessions become the fortress walls. My house, my car. Its reputation becomes the guards at the gate. My job title, my achievements. Its relationships and beliefs become the territory it must defend. My family, my opinions. The entire, exhausting project of control is the ego's full-time job of maintaining and defending this imaginary fortress. It is a life sentence of anxiety. What happens when you see not just as a theory, but in your own experience, that there is no solid self to defend. The fortress walls dissolve. The guards can go home. The full-time, high-stress job of being me is over. The implications are radical. You begin to worry less about what other people think, because a criticism or an insult has no solid me to land on and wound. It is just sound, just words passing through awareness. You begin to release the heavy burden of self-blame and regret. A mistake is no longer a permanent stain on your fixed character. It is simply an action that arose from a complex web of causes and conditions. You can learn from it and let it go. The compulsive need to compare yourself to others begins to fade. Envy, jealousy, and status anxiety lose their fuel because the whole competition between your imaginary self and their imaginary self is seen for the absurd game it is. You are not erased. You become lighter. You become more flexible, more spontaneous, and paradoxically, more intimately connected to the world, because the artificial barrier between self and other has become porous and transparent. We have now journeyed from the vast, external world to the intimate, internal one. We began by seeing that our struggle for control is futile, because all of external reality is impermanent, Anika. Now, we have looked inside and found that the supposed controller, the I at the center of it all, is also a fluid process, not a fixed entity, a truth called anatta. This raises a crucial question. If the world is in flux, and the self is an illusion, why does the experience of pain, anxiety, and dissatisfaction, the experience of suffering, feel so real and so consistent? If the war for control is being waged by a ghost on behalf of a phantom kingdom, what is the precise mechanism that generates the very real casualties of this war? To answer this, we must turn to the Buddha's most famous teaching, his core diagnosis of the human condition. We must explore the Four Noble Truths. We find ourselves in a perplexing situation. Our journey so far has revealed a world that is fundamentally fluid and uncontrollable, a reality defined by impermanence. We have turned our gaze inward and discovered that the self we thought was in charge is also a dynamic process, an empty house with no permanent resident. And yet, despite the illusory nature of the controller and the uncontrollable nature of the world, our experience of frustration, anxiety, and dissatisfaction remains undeniably real. The suffering is real. The question is, how? How can this pain arise from such an empty and transient foundation? It is at this critical juncture that we turn to the core teaching of the Buddha, the very first sermon he delivered after his enlightenment. This teaching was not a set of divine commandments or a complex metaphysical theory. It was, in essence, a medical diagnosis. The Buddha approached the human condition not as a priest, but as a great physician. He presented his findings in a clear, logical, and practical framework known as the Four Noble Truths, a framework that remains as relevant today as it was 25 centuries ago. Think of it as a consultation with the most insightful doctor imaginable. First, he identifies the symptom. Second, he diagnoses the cause. Third, he gives a clear prognosis. And fourth, he writes a prescription. The first noble truth is the clear-eyed acknowledgement of the symptom. The symptom is dukkha. This Pali word is often translated as suffering, but its meaning is far more subtle and profound. To a Western mind, suffering might imply a state of constant, overt misery, which doesn't match the experience of most people. Dukkha is more accurately understood as a pervasive sense of dissatisfaction, a fundamental unease, or an inherent unsatisfactoriness in the very nature of conditioned existence. It's the low-grade hum of anxiety that persists even when things are going well. To understand it fully, we can look at its three distinct levels. The first is the most obvious, dukkha. Dukkha, the suffering of pain. This is the clear, undeniable pain of a headache, the grief of losing a loved one, the fear of a serious illness, the frustration of failure. It is the raw pain of birth, old age, sickness, and death. This is the suffering everyone recognizes. The second level is more subtle, viparinama, dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the anxiety that lurks within our happiest moments. We are on a beautiful vacation, and a small voice whispers, "It's almost over." We achieve a long-sought goal, and the pleasure immediately begins to fade, leaving a faint sense of anticlimax. This form of dukkha, arises directly from our resistance to anicca, to impermanence. We cling to pleasant experiences, wanting them to last forever, and so we suffer when they inevitably change or end. The very happiness we grasp contains the seed of future sorrow, simply because it cannot and will not last. The third and most profound level is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence itself. This is the background hum of dissatisfaction that comes from being a temporary assembly of the five aggregates, as we explored earlier. It is the inherent vulnerability of being a body that can get sick, a mind that can be troubled, a life that is utterly dependent on a web of changing conditions. It's the feeling of being not quite whole, the vague sense that something is missing, the existential friction of being a transient being in a transient world. This is why even billionaires can be miserable, why people who seem to have it all can feel empty inside. The first noble truth is not a pessimistic declaration that life is awful. It is a realistic and compassionate acknowledgement that this subtle and overt dissatisfaction is a universal symptom of the human condition. It's not your fault, it's just the starting point. The second noble truth is the physician's diagnosis of the cause. If dukkha is the symptom, what is the underlying disease? The Buddha identified the cause with a single, powerful word, tanha. Tanha translates as thirst, craving, or desire. It is the intense driving force within us that is never satisfied. It is the engine that powers our suffering. This craving, too, has three forms. The first is the craving for sense pleasures. This is the endless wanting of things that please our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. The thirst for delicious food, beautiful music, praise, fame, and pleasurable sensations. It is a chase that can never be won, because each satisfaction is fleeting and only leads to the desire for more. The second form is the craving to become. This is the deep, existential thirst of the ego. It is the craving to be something, to have a solid and lasting identity, to achieve success, to become more powerful, more loved, more significant. It is this craving for becoming that directly fuels our modern obsession with control. We try to control our careers to become successful. We try to control our relationships to become secure. We try to control our image to become admired. This is the ego's desperate project to turn its illusory self into a permanent reality, a project doomed to fail in a world of impermanence. The third form is the craving for non-existence. This is the desire to get rid of what is unpleasant. It is the violent push-away, the wish for a painful emotion to disappear immediately, the desperate hope that an annoying person would just go away, the desire to annihilate our own feelings of shame or failure. At its most extreme, this craving can manifest as the desire for self-destruction. All three forms of tanha, grasping for pleasure, grasping for selfhood, and pushing away pain, create a state of constant tension and inner conflict. The second noble truth tells us with clinical precision, this thirst, this craving, this is the root cause of your dissatisfaction. At this point, a practical person might become impatient with philosophy. This is precisely the point of a famous parable told by the Buddha, the story of the man shot by a poisoned arrow. A man is walking in the forest when he is struck by an arrow coated in a deadly poison. His friends and family rush to his side and call for a surgeon to remove it. But the wounded man holds up his hand and says, "Wait, before you pull this arrow out, I need to know a few things. Who was the man who shot me? What caste or clan did he belong to? Was he tall or short, dark-skinned or light? From which village did he come? What kind of wood was the bow made from? What kind of sinew was used for the bowstring? What type of bird did the feathers on the arrow come from? And what, exactly, is the precise formula for the poison on its tip?" the Buddha asked his followers. What would happen to such a man? The answer is obvious. While he was demanding answers to these ultimately irrelevant questions, the poison would spread through his body, and he would die. The only intelligent course of action is to say, "There is a poisoned arrow piercing my flesh. The single most important thing is to get it out, now." The Four Noble Truths are this practical. The Buddha was not concerned with metaphysical speculation about the origins of the universe or the existence of a soul. His entire teaching was focused on this one urgent task, identifying the arrow of suffering and teaching us how to pull it out. This brings us to the third noble truth. the physician's prognosis. And the prognosis is one of profound hope. It is the truth of Nirodha, the cessation of suffering. It states that there is a cure. The disease of craving is treatable. It is possible to live a life free from the fever of dukkha. This state of ultimate health is called nirvana. Nirvana does not mean a heavenly realm you go to after you die. It literally means to extinguish or to blow out. What is extinguished are the fires of Tanhath, fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is the profound, unshakable peace that arises when the thirsty, grasping mind comes to rest. It is the peace of the open hand, no longer clenched in a fist of desire or resistance. It is the freedom that Kisa Gotami tasted when she finally accepted the reality of loss. It is a state of being that is available here and now. And finally, the fourth noble truth is the prescription, the medicine itself. It is the truth of Magga, the path leading to the cessation of suffering. It is not enough to know that a cure exists. One must follow the treatment plan. This treatment plan is the Noble Eightfold Path. It is a comprehensive guide to living, a set of 8 interconnected practices that work together to weaken the habit of craving and cultivate wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. This path is the how-to of the entire teaching. It is the practical, step-by-step method for pulling the poisoned arrow out of our own heart. So, the diagnosis is complete. We have acknowledged the universal symptom of dissatisfaction, dukkha. We have identified its root cause in the feverish thirst of craving, tanha. We have been given the hopeful prognosis that a cure is possible, the state of nirvana, and we have been handed the prescription, the Noble Eightfold Path. Like any patient who has just been given a clear path to recovery, our first question is a practical one. Where do I begin? What is the first, most essential step I can take on this journey of healing? The path begins, as all true journeys do, not with a great leap, but with a single, simple act of awareness. It begins with the practice of paying attention. It begins with the cultivation of right mindfulness. We have received the physician's diagnosis. We understand the symptom of dissatisfaction, its root cause in craving, the hope of a cure, and the prescription of the Eightfold Path. Like any patient holding a prescription, our first question is a practical one. Where do I start? What is the first ingredient? The answer, the very foundation of this entire path to healing, is not a complex ritual or a difficult belief. It is a simple, innate human capacity that every single one of us possesses, though we have often let it fall into disuse. It is the capacity for right mindfulness. In Pali, the word is sama sati. Sati means memory or recollection, but in this context, it means remembering to be present. It is the radical act of waking up to our own lives, of showing up for the only moment we ever truly have. This one. Mindfulness is not some esoteric, mystical state reserved for monks in mountain caves. It is the simple, yet profound difference between being technically alive and being fully, vibrantly alive. To understand what mindfulness is, it is first helpful to look at what it is not, to look at the default state in which most of us spend the majority of our waking hours. This is the state of the autopilot mind. Have you ever been driving a familiar route, and you arrive at your destination with absolutely no memory of the last several miles? Have you ever eaten an entire meal while scrolling through your phone, only to look down at an empty plate, unable to recall the taste or texture of the food? Have you ever been in the middle of a conversation, nodding and smiling, while your mind is actually miles away, replaying an argument from yesterday, or rehearsing a meeting for tomorrow? This is the autopilot mind. It is a mind that is almost never where the body is. It is a time-traveling mind. It spends its energy either in the past, ruminating on old regrets, relitigating hurts, and marinating in guilt, or it catapults into the future, rehearsing, planning, worrying, and generating anxiety about what might happen. This endless mental commuting is utterly exhausting, and it is the native soil for our obsession with control. When our mind is in the future, we are trying to control outcomes that haven't happened yet, manipulating imaginary variables to prevent potential pain. When our mind is in the past, we are trying to retroactively control events that are already over, wishing we had said or done something different. In both cases, we are absent from the one place where life is actually happening, right here, right now. We miss the warmth of the sun on our skin, the taste of our food, the true presence of our loved ones. We live our lives as though they were a dress rehearsal for some future event, forgetting that this, right here, is the main performance. Mindfulness is the gentle but firm invitation to come home. So, what is it? Precisely. The most widely used definition in the West, articulated by the teacher Jon Kabat-Zinn, is beautifully simple. Mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let us unpack those three crucial components. First, on purpose. This means that mindfulness is an intentional act. It is not the same as the accidental awareness that might happen when a loud noise startles you. It is a conscious choice to direct and collect our scattered attention. It is an act of reclaiming the agency of our own mind, of deciding for ourselves what we will place our attention on, rather than letting it be hijacked by every passing thought, emotion, or external distraction. Second, in the present moment. This is the direct antidote to the time-traveling autopilot mind. It is the practice of anchoring our awareness in the raw, unfiltered reality of this moment, not the memory of the last moment, not the anticipation of the next one, but the actual, tangible experience of right now. It is feeling the air enter your nostrils, hearing the distant sound of a siren, noticing the subtle tension in your shoulders. It is about arriving, fully, in the life you are actually living. Third, and this is perhaps the most challenging and transformative part, is non-judgmentally. This means observing our experience with a quality of kindness, curiosity, and acceptance. In our default mode, the mind is a relentless judge. We have a thought, and we judge it. That's a stupid thought. We feel an emotion, and we judge it. I shouldn't be feeling angry. We have a pain, and we judge it. This is terrible. I can't stand it. This constant judgment is a form of resistance, a second arrow that we shoot into ourselves after the first arrow of the experience itself. A non-judgmental awareness, however, changes the entire relationship. We feel anxiety, and the mindful response is, here is the feeling of anxiety. How interesting. There is a tightness in the chest, a churning in the stomach. We are not endorsing the anxiety or trying to get rid of it. We are simply, gently, acknowledging its presence, like a scientist observing a phenomenon without bias. This acceptance is what allows our experiences, even difficult ones, to arise, exist, and pass away naturally, without getting stuck. To illustrate this quality of non-judgment, imagine a great walled city which represents your mind. At the main entrance to this city, the king has posted a wise and patient gatekeeper. The gatekeeper's job is not to fight with people or to decide who is worthy of entering and who must be thrown out. His job is simply to be aware of everyone who passes through the gate. He sits calmly and observes. He sees a farmer with a cart of vegetables enter, and he simply notes, a farmer enters. He sees a richly dressed merchant leave, and he notes, a merchant leaves. A ragged beggar approaches, and he notes, a beggar is here. A proud soldier marches past, and he notes, a soldier is here. He does not chase after the farmer to praise his vegetables. He does not try to block the soldier out of fear. He does not get into a long story with the beggar. He simply knows what is happening at the gate. This gatekeeper is your mindful awareness. The travelers are your thoughts, feelings, and sensations. A thought of sadness is the beggar. A surge of anger is the soldier. A happy memory is a laughing child. The practice of mindfulness is to become this gatekeeper, to sit at the gateway of your senses and simply note what is arising and passing, without getting entangled, without judgment, and without resistance. This simple knowing creates a vast space of inner peace and clarity. It is crucial to correct a common misconception. Mindfulness is not about stopping your thoughts or trying to force your mind to be empty. This is a recipe for frustration because the nature of the mind is to think. Trying to stop thoughts is like trying to stop the waves in the ocean. The goal is not an empty mind, but a known mind. The goal is to see the waves of thought clearly without being swept away by them. Nor is mindfulness about becoming passive or emotionless. In fact, it is the opposite. It is about becoming more fully engaged with life. more fully alive to the entire spectrum of human experience, both the pleasant and the unpleasant, with courage and grace. And this practice is not something that requires you to retreat from the world. You can integrate it into your life in small, simple ways. The next time you drink a cup of coffee or tea, try dedicating the first sip to mindfulness. Just for that one sip, experience it completely. Feel the warmth of the mug in your hands. See the steam rising. Notice the aroma before you even taste it. Then, as you sip, notice the flavor, the temperature, the sensation as it fills your mouth. That's it. That is a moment of mindfulness. When you are walking from one place to another, choose to feel 3 consecutive steps. Feel the sole of your foot make contact with the ground, the transfer of weight, the lifting of the heel. For those 3 steps, you are fully present. When you wash your hands, feel the sensation of the water. Notice its temperature, the feeling of the soap, the sound it makes. These micro hits of presence begin to retrain the mind, creating new neural pathways. They teach us that peace is not in some distant future, but is available in the fabric of our ordinary, everyday moments. Mindfulness, then, is our inherent capacity to wake up. It creates a crucial pause between a stimulus and our habitual reaction. In that pause, we find our freedom. In that space, we can choose to respond with wisdom and compassion, rather than reacting with fear and control. But as anyone who has tried this knows, the mind is like a wild puppy. It does not like to stay. It is constantly wandering off, pulled by a scent from the past or a noise from the future. So, how do we sustain this practice? What is the leash we can use to gently, kindly, and repeatedly call our attention back home to the present? The answer is the most simple, reliable, and intimate tool we possess. It is as close to us as our own body. It is the breath. We have acknowledged the power and the practice of mindfulness, the intentional act of waking up to the present moment. Yet, we have also acknowledged a fundamental challenge: the restless nature of the human mind. Our awareness is like a kite in a strong wind, tossed about by gusts of memory from the past and eddies of anxiety about the future. It darts and dives, rarely staying still. To practice mindfulness, we need a string, something gentle yet firm, that allows us to feel the kite's movements and guide it back to the calm center of the sky. We need an anchor that can hold us steady in the storm of our own thoughts. That anchor, as taught by wise traditions for millennia, is the breath. It is the most simple, accessible, and profound tool we have for inhabiting the present moment. It is always with us, a faithful companion from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. And by learning to rest our attention upon it, we can begin to find our footing in the here and now. Why is the breath such a perfect anchor for our wandering attention? First, it is utterly and completely portable. You do not need any special equipment, any quiet room, or any particular posture to find your breath. It is with you in the traffic jam, in the stressful meeting, in the middle of a difficult conversation, and while waiting in line at the grocery store. It is the one constant in an ever-changing life, a home base to which you can return at any time, no matter where you are or what you are doing. Secondly, the breath is always, and can only ever be, in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past. You cannot take a breath that is in the future. Each inhalation and each exhalation is an event that is happening right now. Therefore, by placing your attention on the physical sensations of breathing, you are tethering your mind to the present. The mind may still try to wander, but the breath provides a concrete, physical sensation to which you can repeatedly and gently return, pulling you out of the imaginary worlds of past and future and back into the living reality of this moment. Furthermore, the breath serves as the ultimate bridge between our mind and our body. It is a unique process, sitting at the crossroads of the voluntary and involuntary nervous systems. You can consciously decide to hold your breath or to breathe more deeply, but the moment you stop paying attention, the body's ancient wisdom takes over and breathes for you. This connection is a powerful two-way street. When the mind is agitated, anxious, or angry, the breath tends to become short, shallow, and rapid. When the mind is calm and at ease, the breath naturally becomes slower, deeper, and more regular. This is a feedback loop we can consciously engage with by intentionally bringing a calm, steady awareness to the breath. we send a powerful signal back to the brain that we are safe. We are gently nudging the nervous system out of its fight or flight mode and into a state of rest and calm. Focusing on the breath is not just a mental exercise, it is a physiological act of self-regulation and soothing. Here, we touch upon a point that is absolutely central to our entire exploration of control. The instruction in mindfulness of breathing is not to control the breath. This is not a breathing exercise in the conventional sense, where you are instructed to breathe in for a count of 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. While such techniques have their place, the core practice of mindfulness is something far more subtle and profound. The invitation is simply to observe the breath exactly as it is, without trying to change it in any way. Let the body breathe itself. Your only task is to feel the sensations. Is the breath shallow right now? The instruction is just to know. The breath is shallow. Is it deep and slow? Simply know. The breath is deep and slow. Is it choppy or smooth? Does it pause at the top of the inhalation? Just notice. This practice is a radical, embodied lesson in letting go of control. In every other area of our lives, we are conditioned to interfere, to manage, to improve, to fix. But with the breath, we practice the art of non-interference. We trust the innate wisdom of the body to perform its most essential function without our help. We adopt the role of a curious, friendly observer, not a demanding manager. Each moment, you simply watch the breath without trying to manipulate it. You are training your mind in the skill of acceptance. You are learning, on a cellular level, what it feels like to experience everything in this case. The raw, natural sensations of the breath without the exhausting need to control anything. It is a meditation on the central theme of our journey, played out in the quiet rhythm of your own body. Let's try this for a moment. You don't need to change anything. You can do this right now, wherever you are. Simply bring your attention to the fact that you are breathing. Find a posture that is comfortable, perhaps with your back relatively straight to allow for an easy flow of air. You can gently close your eyes or leave them softly open with a downward gaze. Now, begin to notice the physical sensations of your breathing. You might choose to rest your attention at the tip of your nostrils. Feel the subtle coolness of the air as it enters your body on the in-breath, and feel the slight warmth of the air as it leaves your body on the out-breath. Coolness as it comes in, warmth as it goes out. Just rest your attention there, as if you were a gatekeeper watching the traffic at the gate. There is no need to force anything. Or, you might prefer to rest your attention on the movement of your abdomen. You can even place a hand gently on your belly. Feel the gentle expansion on the in-breath, as the diaphragm pushes down and the belly rises like a balloon. And feel the gentle falling, the contraction, on the out-breath, rising and falling, inflating and deflating. Just this. Now, inevitably, your mind will wander. It will be distracted by a sound, a memory, a plan, or a worry. This is not a mistake. It is not a failure. It is simply what minds do. The moment you realize your mind has wandered is a moment of victory. It is a moment of mindfulness. In that moment, without any scolding or judgment, simply acknowledge where your mind went. Thinking, or planning, and then, as gently as you would guide a lost puppy, escort your attention back to the physical sensations of your breath. You may have to do this 10 times or 100 times. It doesn't matter. The practice is not in staying with the breath perfectly. The practice is in the gentle, kind, and patient act of returning over and over again. In teaching this practice to his own son, Rahula, the Buddha used the analogy of a carpenter, a sawyer, cutting a piece of timber. A skilled sawyer makes a straight line in the wood with ink. Then, he takes his saw, and with a steady and relaxed attention, he keeps his eye only on that line. He is aware of his hands moving back and forth. He is aware of the sawdust flying, but his primary focus remains on the line. He isn't tense or aggressive, but his attention is consistent. The Buddha explained that our attention to the breath should be like this. We are simply keeping our awareness on the natural line of the in and out breath. This steady, relaxed focus allows us to use the breath as an emergency pause button in daily life. When you feel a surge of anger, a wave of panic, or a moment of intense stress, you don't need to sit on a cushion. You can simply pause and take 3 conscious breaths. Inhale, knowing you are inhaling. Exhale, knowing you are exhaling. For just those 3 breaths, you have stepped out of the frantic story in your head and anchored yourself in the physical reality of your body. This tiny pause creates a space, and in that space, you can find the freedom to choose a wiser response. The breath, then, is our constant companion and our most reliable guide. It anchors us in the present, soothes our nervous system, and provides a living lesson in the wisdom of non-interference. It is the foundational practice that stabilizes the mind. Once we have found a degree of stability here, once we are more firmly grounded in the present moment by our connection to the breath, we can become more courageous. We can use this newfound stability to turn our attention toward the very storms the mind creates. Having found our anchor, we are now ready to look at the waves themselves, the thoughts that constantly move through our awareness. We are ready to learn how to watch the clouds drift through our mental sky without being swept away by the storm. Having found our anchor in the gentle, rhythmic tide of the breath, we have cultivated a small island of stability in the vast ocean of the mind. From this stable shore, we can now turn our attention to the weather itself, to the endless procession of thoughts that drifts, rushes, and sometimes storms through our awareness. For most of us, this inner stream of consciousness is not just something we experience. It is who we believe we are. The inner narrator who plans, worries, judges, and remembers is the voice we mistake for our true self. We are so immersed in this stream that we do not realize we are being carried along by its current. The next step in our journey is therefore a radical one. It is the practice of stepping out of the stream, sitting on the bank, and simply watching it flow by. It is the discovery that you are not the thoughts, nor are you the voice that speaks them. You are the silent, spacious awareness in which the thoughts appear. To understand this profound shift in identity, let us use a powerful metaphor. Imagine that your fundamental nature, your core consciousness, is like a vast, open sky. It is boundless, clear, and inherently peaceful. It has been there your entire life, and its nature is unchanging. It does not get older, it does not get damaged, and it has no agenda. It is simply a field of pure, knowing awareness. Now, floating through this sky are clouds. These clouds are your thoughts and feelings. Some clouds are white, puffy, and pleasant to look at, like a happy memory or a kind thought. Others are dark and heavy, crackling with the lightning of anger or rumbling with the thunder of anxiety. Some are just thin, wispy streaks of gray, the random, meaningless thoughts that drift in and out of focus. In our unawakened state, we make a fundamental mistake. We believe we are the clouds. When a dark cloud of sadness appears, we say, "I am sad." When a storm of anger gathers, we say, "I am an angry person." We identify so completely with the passing weather of the mind that we forget the vast, peaceful sky that is our true nature. We chase after the pleasant white clouds, trying to hold on to them, and we run from the dark storm clouds, trying to push them away. Our entire life becomes a frantic and exhausting exercise in meteorological control. The practice of observing our thoughts is the practice of remembering that we are the sky, not the clouds. The sky is never harmed by even the most violent storm. The thunder doesn't break it. The lightning doesn't burn it. The storm rages for a time, and then, as all storms do, it passes, revealing the same clear, blue, peaceful sky that was there all along. Realizing this, we can learn to allow the clouds of thought to come and go without identifying with them and without resisting them. We are the space in which the weather happens. This approach runs counter to our deepest instincts. Our instinct, when faced with a painful or obsessive thought, is to fight it. We tell ourselves, "Don't worry about that," or "I need to stop thinking about him," or "I have to be more positive." We try to control our thoughts through force of will. But this is a battle that can never be won. It is based on a misunderstanding of how the mind works. Try this simple experiment. For the next 30 seconds, do whatever you can to not think of a pink elephant. Do not imagine its large, floppy ears. Do not picture its wrinkled, gray, or rather, pink skin. Absolutely do not think about its long, curving trunk. What happens? Of course, the mind is immediately filled with images of a pink elephant. The very act of trying to suppress a thought is a kind of mental highlighting. You are giving it energy, importance, and focus. Pushing against a thought is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes immense effort, and the moment you relax your grip, it shoots up into the air with even more force than before. The path to freedom is not through suppression, but through a wise and gentle observation. There is a beautiful teaching story that illustrates this alternative. A young monk was being driven to distraction during his meditation. His mind was constantly invaded by thoughts of desire, fear, and doubt. He saw them as his enemies, as invaders defiling his sacred practice. He fought them with all his might, trying to force his mind into a state of silent purity. But the more he fought, the more ferocious the thoughts became. Exhausted and defeated, he went to his elderly meditation master for help. He expected the master to give him a powerful new technique for vanquishing these mental demons. Instead, the old teacher smiled gently and said, "Next time these thoughts appear, do not see them as enemies. See them as guests. Greet them politely. Say to them in your mind, 'I see you there. Welcome.' And then invite them in for tea." The young monk was baffled, but he trusted his teacher. The next day, as he sat to meditate, the familiar storm of thoughts began to gather. But this time, instead of bracing for a fight, he remembered the instruction. A powerful wave of fear arose, and he thought to himself, "Ah, hello fear, my old friend. I see you. The kettle is on. Please, come in and have some tea." A seductive fantasy appeared, and he greeted it. "Welcome, desire. It is a fine day for tea, isn't it?" He did this with every thought that arose. He met them not with hostility, but with a calm, curious hospitality. And a strange thing happened. The thoughts, having been seen, acknowledged, and accepted without any resistance, lost their desperate energy. They no longer had anything to push against. Some would enter, sit for a moment, in the warmth of his acceptance, and then, finding no argument to sustain them, they would get up and leave of their own accord. The monk learned that his thoughts fed on his resistance. By offering them the tea of his mindful, non-judgmental attention, he starved them of their power. We can translate this beautiful parable into a simple, practical technique often called noting or labeling. It is a way to be the courteous host for our thoughts. As you sit, anchored to your breath, you will inevitably notice that your mind has wandered off and become engrossed in a story. The moment you notice this, you have already woken up. That is the first step. The next step is to gently and silently in your mind apply a soft, simple label to the thought. If you were lost in planning your weekend, you might just note, planning. If you were worrying about a future event, worrying. If you were replaying a memory from childhood, remembering. If you were criticizing yourself, judging. The labels should be general and whispered, not shouted. The tone should be one of friendly curiosity, not of accusation. The point is not to conduct a deep analysis, but simply to recognize the nature of the mental event that has occurred. After applying the label, "Ah, this is the thought of worrying you," then gently and kindly guide your attention back to your anchor, back to the physical sensations of your breath. The label acts as a pair of scissors, snipping the thread of identification that has hooked you into the thought's narrative. You are not pushing the thought away. You are simply acknowledging its presence and then consciously choosing to place your attention elsewhere. You do this over and over again. Worrying, back to the breath. Planning, back to the breath. Remembering, back to the breath. Each time you do this, you are weakening the old, unconscious habit of being carried away, and you are strengthening the new, conscious muscle of mindful awareness. The result of this practice, cultivated over time, is nothing short of freedom. It creates a space. Before, a thought of anger would arise and immediately trigger the feeling of anger, and perhaps an angry word or action. It was an instantaneous, automatic chain reaction. But now, with mindfulness, a thought of anger arises, and you see it. You note anger. In that moment, a space opens up between the thought and you. You have a precious moment of choice. You can see the angry thought as just a cloud passing through the sky of your mind. You can feel its energy, but you are not compelled to become it. You can ask yourself, is it wise to act on this? Will feeding this anger bring peace to me or to others? You are no longer a slave to the tyranny of your own automatic thoughts. You are moving from a state of reaction to a state of wise response. We have learned then to find our anchor in the breath. and to use that stability to become the calm, accepting sky for the passing clouds of our thoughts. We have learned to offer them tea instead of battle, using the gentle practice of labeling to acknowledge their presence without being swept away. This grants us a profound space around our mental narratives. But some weather is more than just a passing cloud. Some weather has an intense, visceral energy that floods our entire body. These are our strong emotions. So, we must now ask, how can we apply this same gentle, non-judgmental awareness not just to the story of a thought, but to the raw, physical power of an emotion like rage, terror, or deep grief? How can we learn to ride the energetic wave of an emotion without being consumed and drowned by it? We have walked a dedicated path together, a path of cultivation. We began with right effort, learning to channel our energy not with brute force, but with the balanced grace of a skilled musician tuning an instrument. We learned to gently encourage the thoughts that lead to clarity, and to allow the thoughts that lead to confusion to simply pass by, without a struggle. This effort provided the fuel, the gentle and persistent energy needed for our journey. Then, we cultivated right mindfulness, the heart of the practice. We learned to bring our awareness back, again and again, to the present moment. We anchored ourselves in the feeling of the breath, the sensations in the body, the simple reality of what is, right here, right now. We practiced observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment, watching them arise and fall like clouds in the vast sky of the mind. We have gathered the energy, and we have focused that energy into a clear, non-judgmental awareness. So the natural question arises, what happens next? When the scattered streams of our attention, which usually flow in 1,000 different directions, are gently guided by effort and mindfulness into a single channel, what is the result? The result is a state of profound stillness and unity, a state known as right concentration, or in Pali, Sama Samadhi. This is the eighth and final step of the noble path, and it is not so much a final destination, as it is the opening of a door to an entirely new landscape of the mind. Right concentration is the ability of the mind to become unified, to rest upon a single object of meditation without being pulled away by distractions. Imagine trying to read a book in a room where a television is blaring, music is playing, and people are shouting. Your focus would be fragmented, your comprehension weak. This is the normal state of our untrained mind, constantly pulled by the senses, by memories, by worries about the future. The practice of mindfulness is like turning down the volume on all those distractions, one by one. Right concentration is what happens when the room finally becomes quiet. It is the moment when the mind, no longer fragmented, can settle completely upon its object, whether that is the breath, a visual image, or a specific feeling. This is a state of profound peace. It's important, however, to distinguish right concentration from the kind of ordinary, everyday focus we might experience when absorbed in a movie, a video game, or an intense work project. While those activities involve focus, they are often a form of distraction, a losing of oneself in the object. We become so absorbed that we lose our sense of awareness. Right concentration is different. It is a lucid, bright, and wakeful state. There is no dullness here, no sense of being lost. Instead, there is a heightened sense of presence. You are fully with the object of your attention, and you are fully aware that you are with it. The mind is both calm and alert, like a candle flame in a room with no wind, burning steadily and brightly. It is a state where the internal chatter, the voice of the inner critic, the restless planning and worrying, all subsides. For the first time, many people who experience this state report a feeling of true mental silence, a silence that is not empty, but filled with a profound sense of peace and wholeness. As the mind settles into this unified state, something remarkable begins to happen. From the depths of this stillness, new qualities of experience begin to emerge, qualities that are not dependent on anything in the outside world. These are the states of what are known in Buddhism as piti and sukha. Piti is often translated as rapture or joy. It is a more energetic quality, a feeling of delight and lightness that can manifest in the body as goosebumps, a sense of pleasant tingling, or a feeling of being gently lifted. It is the mind's natural expression of delight at being freed from its usual burdens of worry and distraction. Imagine a person who has been carrying a heavy backpack for miles, and they finally set it down. That initial sigh of relief, That feeling of lightness and release is something like piti. It is not a giddy, agitated excitement, but a deep, pervasive sense of well-being that seems to bubble up from within, nourishing the entire body and mind. Following this initial rapture, a calmer, more sustained quality arises, known as sukha. This is often translated as happiness or bliss. Where piti might be like the bubbling of a spring, sukha is like the deep, calm, clear pool that the spring feeds into. It is a profound sense of contentment, a quiet and unshakable happiness that is independent of all external conditions. This is a crucial point for us in the modern world. We are conditioned to believe that happiness is something to be acquired from the outside. We believe we will be happy when we get the promotion, when we buy the house, when we find the perfect partner, when we get enough likes on our post. We are constantly chasing after pleasant experiences and trying to push away unpleasant ones. But right concentration reveals a revolutionary truth. Happiness is not a result of getting what you want. True, lasting happiness, sukha, is an innate quality of a mind that is calm, unified, and free from craving. It is a happiness that arises from within. When you experience this, even for a moment, it fundamentally changes your relationship with the world. You begin to realize that the frantic search for happiness outside of yourself is a futile one, because the deepest wellspring of joy is already present within your own consciousness, waiting to be uncovered. This realization is incredibly empowering. It means you are not a victim of circumstance, forever dependent on the world to give you scraps of pleasure. You have the capacity for a deep and authentic happiness within you, a treasure that cannot be bought, and more importantly, can never be taken away. But the purpose of right concentration is not merely to feel good. The bliss and peace of samadhi are wonderful, but they are a means to an end, not the end in itself. Their primary function is to prepare the mind for the work of insight, or vipassana. A mind that is scattered, agitated, and filled with neurotic chatter is like a muddy, turbulent lake. If you look into its surface, you see nothing but distorted, murky reflections. You cannot see the bottom of the lake, nor can you see a clear reflection of the sky above. This is our ordinary mind, unable to see reality clearly because of its own internal turmoil. A mind that has been calmed and unified through right concentration is like that same lake after the mud has settled and the wind has died down. The water becomes perfectly still and crystal clear. Now, when you look into it, you can see all the way to the bottom. You can see every pebble, every fish, and you can see a perfect, undistorted reflection of the moon and the stars. The concentrated mind becomes the perfect instrument for seeing things as they truly are. Think of a scientist in a laboratory. To conduct a delicate experiment, she needs a stable workbench, free from vibrations. She needs pure chemical reagents, free from contaminants. And she needs a focused, unwavering mind to observe the results. Right concentration provides this inner laboratory. It creates the stable, pure, and focused state of mind necessary to investigate the nature of our own experience. It stills the vibrations of restlessness and worry. It purifies the mind of the contaminants of greed, hatred, and delusion. With this purified instrument, we can now turn our attention inward and begin to see the fundamental truths that the Buddha pointed to, the truths of impermanence, of unsatisfactoriness, and of non-self. These are no longer just philosophical concepts to be debated. In the clear light of a concentrated mind, they become direct, lived experiences. We can observe the arising and passing of a single thought. We can feel the impermanent nature of a physical sensation. We can see how the thing we call I is not a solid, unchanging entity, but a dynamic, ever-changing process. This is the ultimate purpose of samadhi, to create a mind so calm and clear that it becomes a mirror, perfectly reflecting the nature of reality. It is the sharpening of the sword of wisdom, so that it can cut through the veils of ignorance that cause all of our suffering. Therefore, right concentration is not an escape from reality. It is a profound preparation to meet reality face to face, with a mind that is finally ready to see. It is the culmination of our training in mental discipline, and it is the gateway to liberation. Having gathered our energy, focused our awareness, and allowed the mind to settle into a state of lucid calm, our instrument is now perfectly tuned. The laboratory is ready, the lake is still, The question now becomes, what do we see when we look with this newfound clarity? We are now prepared to look directly at the very fabric of existence. And the first thing we will notice in everything we observe is its most basic, universal, and undeniable characteristic, its constant, relentless, and beautiful state of flow. We are ready to understand the river of change. With the mind now settled, unified, and clear, like a perfectly still lake on a windless night, we are prepared to look. We are ready to gaze into the mirror of our own experience, a mirror polished by the practice of concentration, and see the nature of reality without distortion. And what is the first, most fundamental truth that this clarity reveals? What is the essential characteristic of every single thing we perceive, from the stars in the cosmos to the thoughts in our own minds? It is the truth of ceaseless, relentless, and universal change. In the language of the Buddha, this is called anicca, or impermanence. This is not a complex philosophical doctrine to be memorized. It is the very pulse of existence, the rhythm to which all of life dances. To understand impermanence is to take the first step towards profound wisdom and liberation. We often think of the world in terms of solid, stable things. We see a mountain and perceive it as the very symbol of permanence. We see our bodies in the mirror and assume a continuity, the same person looking back at us today as yesterday. We fall in love, and in the peak of that happiness, we feel it will last forever. But this perception of solidity is an illusion, a trick of the mind that moves too slowly to perceive the constant, subtle flux that underlies everything. The mountain is not static. It is being weathered by wind and rain, pushed upwards by tectonic forces, its very substance flowing in a geological dance that spans millions of years. Our bodies are not the same from one moment to the next. Billions of cells are dying and being replaced continuously. The air we breathe becomes part of us, and the food we eat is transformed into energy and tissue. The person you were 7 years ago is, on a cellular level, almost a complete stranger to the person you are today. And our minds, of course, are the most vivid demonstration of impermanence. Thoughts, feelings, moods, and memories flow in a torrent, one giving way to the next without pause. A moment of joy is replaced by a flicker of anxiety, which is then replaced by a neutral observation, which is then replaced by a memory from childhood. It never, ever stops. This is anicca. It is the universal law that all compounded things, meaning all things that are made up of other parts, are subject to change and dissolution. There is nothing, absolutely nothing in the conditioned world that is exempt from this law. To the Western mind, conditioned by a desire for security and permanence, the idea of anicca can initially sound depressing, even nihilistic. It can feel like a statement that nothing matters, that everything turns to dust. But this is a profound misunderstanding. The truth of impermanence is not a judgment on life. It is simply a description of it. In fact, it is the very thing that makes life possible. Without impermanence, a wound could never heal. A seed could never become a tree. A misunderstanding could never be resolved. The darkness of night could never give way to the light of dawn. Change is the engine of growth, of renewal, and of possibility. The problem is not the law of impermanence itself. The law is neutral. The problem, and the direct cause of so much of our human suffering, is our resistance to it. Our suffering is born from the clash between the way things are, which is fluid and ever-changing, and the way we want them to be, which is fixed, stable, and permanent. Think of it like this. You are standing in a powerful, flowing river. The river is anicca, the constant flow of experience. Suffering arises when we try to do one of two things. First, we experience a moment of profound happiness, a wonderful sensation, a joyful connection with another person. This is like finding a beautiful, smooth stone in the river. Our immediate reaction is to grasp it, to build a small dam around it, to try and hold that piece of the river still, shouting, "This moment, right here, I want it to last forever." But the river cannot be stopped. Its relentless flow pushes against our dam, creating immense pressure, tension, and anxiety. The joy of the moment is lost, replaced by the fear of losing it. Our clinging, our attachment, has turned a beautiful experience into a source of suffering. The second way we suffer is when the river brings us something unpleasant, a difficult emotion, a painful loss, a sickness. This is like a sharp, jagged rock moving towards us in the current. Our reaction is to build a wall, to push against it, to try and force this part of the river away from us, shouting, "Go away, I don't want this." But the river is more powerful than our resistance. We exhaust ourselves fighting it, and in our struggle, we are battered and bruised by the very thing we are trying to avoid. In both cases, the suffering does not come from the river itself, not from the pleasant or unpleasant experiences, but from our futile struggle against its natural flow. So, how do we learn to stop fighting? How do we learn to dance with the river instead of trying to dam it? We do this by moving the understanding of impermanence from an intellectual concept in our head to a deeply felt, lived reality in our bodies. And for this, we use the tool of mindfulness that we have been cultivating. We train ourselves to become intimate observers of change. We can start with the most immediate teacher we have, the breath. Sit quietly and simply observe the process of breathing. Notice the sensation of the air entering your nostrils, cool and fresh. Notice the slight pause, the moment of stillness, and notice the sensation of the air leaving your body, warmer and used. Each breath is a perfect, self-contained lesson in Anicca. It is born, it lives for a moment, and it dies, making way for the next. You don't have to create it or force it. You simply witness this natural, constant rhythm of arising and passing away. Then, you can expand this awareness to the sensations in your body. You might notice an itch on your arm. Instead of immediately scratching it, just observe it. Notice precisely where it is, what its quality is. Is it sharp, tingling, or dull? And just watch. You will discover something miraculous. The itch changes. It may intensify for a moment, and then, all by itself, it will fade and disappear. It arose from conditions, and when those conditions changed, it ceased. This is Anicca in action. You can do this with any sensation, a feeling of warmth in your hands, a tension in your shoulder, the sound of a bird outside your window. Watch them come into the field of your awareness, stay for a while, and then dissolve. You begin to see that your body is not a solid thing, but a vibrant, shimmering field of ever-changing sensations. Then, we turn this mindful gaze toward the mind itself. We watch our thoughts. A happy thought about a past vacation arises. We note it, happiness, and we watch. We don't cling to it or try to elaborate on it. We just watch it, and like a cloud in the sky, it drifts by and dissolves. Then a worried thought about a future deadline appears. We note it, worry, and we simply watch. We don't engage in a debate with it. We don't fuel it with more stories. We treat it with the same gentle, non-judgmental awareness, and we see that it too is impermanent. It also arises and passes away. When we practice like this, patiently and persistently, our relationship with reality begins to shift in a profound way. The acceptance of impermanence is not a resignation, it is a liberation. When we truly understand that everything changes, we stop being so afraid. We know that difficult times, painful emotions, and periods of sadness are, like everything else, impermanent. They will pass. This gives us the courage and resilience to endure them without being broken. We can be with our sorrow, knowing that it is a temporary visitor, not a permanent resident. Paradoxically, understanding impermanence also allows us to experience joy more deeply. When we know that a beautiful sunset, a wonderful conversation, or a moment of peace is fleeting, we pay more attention to it. We don't take it for granted. We cherish it more fully, savoring it in the present moment, because we know this moment is all we have. The knowledge of its passing makes it infinitely more precious. This acceptance makes it easier to let go, to forgive ourselves and others. We understand that the person who hurt us was a product of changing conditions, and that we too are not the same person we were in the past. Holding on to grudges is like trying to hold on to a piece of the river that has long since flowed downstream. It is pointless and exhausting. Therefore, the wisdom of Anicca teaches us to loosen our grip on life. It invites us to open our hands and allow experience to flow through them, without clinging to the pleasant or resisting the unpleasant. We learn to swim with the current, not against it. We are not just an observer standing on the bank of the river of time. We are the river. Our body is the river. Our mind is the river. It is all one continuous, dynamic, and beautiful flow. But this leads to a very deep and unsettling question. If my body is always changing, if my feelings are always changing, and if my thoughts are always changing, then who am I? Who is this I that is witnessing all this change? If everything I identify with is part of this impermanent flow, where is the solid, stable self to be found? If the river is never the same, is the one who steps into it ever the same? This question, born from the direct seeing of impermanence, leads us to the very heart of the Buddhist teaching, to the most profound and liberating insight of all, the truth of non-self. We have stood at the edge of the great river of impermanence, and we have felt its undeniable current. We have watched as our thoughts, our feelings, and even the cells of our bodies arise and pass away in a ceaseless flow. This direct seeing of anicca, of constant change, naturally gives rise to the most profound and personal question a human being can ask. Who am I? If everything I experience is in flux, where is the permanent, unchanging I that is witnessing it all? We feel like a stable self. We wake up in the morning and feel that we are the same person who went to sleep the night before. We have a name, a history, a personality. This sense of self seems to be the most real thing in the world, the solid ground beneath our feet. And yet, the wisdom of Buddhism invites us to do something quite radical. It asks us to question this most basic assumption. It invites us not to deny our existence, but to investigate it with a courageous and open curiosity. The teaching that arises from this investigation is known as anatta, or non-self. This is perhaps the most challenging and ultimately the most liberating teaching in all of Buddhism. It is not a belief to be adopted, but a truth to be discovered for oneself, a truth that unties the deepest knot of our suffering. The Buddha approached this question like a brilliant scientist. Instead of starting with the assumption I have a self, and then trying to describe it, he started from a place of pure observation. He asked, where is this self to be found? Let us look for it. To do this, he deconstructed our human experience into 5 fundamental categories, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas in Sanskrit. These 5 are meant to be a comprehensive list of everything we could possibly point to and call myself. The first is form, or rupa. This is our physical body and all matter. It is everything we can see, touch, and feel, from our bones and skin to the chair we are sitting on and the light entering our eyes. The second is feeling, or vedana. This is the raw data of experience, the simple quality of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral that arises from contact. The warmth of the sun on your skin is pleasant. The sound of a siren is unpleasant. The feeling of your clothes against your body is likely neutral. The third is perception, or sana. This is the faculty that recognizes and labels our feelings. It's the part of the mind that says, ah, that is warmth, or that sound is a siren. It organizes the raw data of feeling into recognizable concepts. The fourth is mental formations, or sankhara. This is a very broad category that includes all of our volitional activities, our habits, our biases, our opinions, our moods, our intentions, our dreams, and our deep-seated tendencies. It is the active, shaping part of our mind, the source of our karma. And the fifth is consciousness, or vijnana. This is the fundamental capacity of awareness itself, the light of knowing that illuminates the other 4 aggregates. Consciousness does not exist on its own. It is always consciousness of something. Eye, consciousness of a sight. Ear, consciousness of a sound. Mind, consciousness of a thought. With this map of human experience laid out, the investigation begins. The Buddha guides us to look at each aggregate and ask 2 simple questions. Is it permanent? And is it truly me? We start with the body, with form. Is my body permanent? As we saw in our exploration of anicca, the answer is clearly no. It is constantly changing, aging, and will one day perish. Is it truly me? If it were, it should obey my every command. I should be able to say, body, do not get sick, or body, do not grow old, and it would obey. But it does not. It follows its own natural laws. So, the body cannot be this permanent self we are looking for. What about our feelings? Are they the self? This is even more obvious. Feelings are like the weather, changing from moment to moment. happiness, sadness, boredom, excitement. They flow through us in a constant stream. A self cannot be something so fickle and unreliable. So, feelings are not the self. What about our perceptions, our labels for things? They too are impermanent. Our perception of a person can change dramatically when we learn something new about them. What we once perceived as beautiful, we might later perceive as ordinary. So, perceptions cannot be the self. Now we come to the trickiest part, our mental formations. This is where most of us locate our sense of identity. We think, I am my personality. I am my opinions, my beliefs, my memories, my character. But are these permanent? Think of the person you were 10 or 20 years ago. Did you have the same opinions, the same tastes, the same reactions? Of course not. Our personality is shaped by conditions, by our experiences, by our relationships. It is a process, not a static entity. And if it changes, it cannot be the permanent core self. Finally, what about consciousness, the awareness itself? Surely this is the ultimate I, the observer. But the Buddha pointed out that consciousness is also conditioned. It only arises in dependence on an object. I consciousness depends on the I and a visible form. Mind consciousness depends on the mind and a thought. There is no separate, independent observer consciousness that exists on its own. It is part of the flow. After this exhaustive search, we are left with a startling conclusion. We have looked in every part of our experience, in every possible hiding place, and we cannot find a solid, independent, unchanging self. This is where the famous parable of the chariot becomes so illuminating. A wise monk named Nagasena was once questioned by King Milinda. The king, a sharp-witted ruler, asked Nagasena his name. The monk replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was merely a designation, a convenient name, and that no permanent person could be found. The king was baffled and challenged him, using the king's own chariot as an example. If there is no person, the king argued, then who is it that wears these robes and takes this food? He then asked Nagasena to define his chariot. Venerable sir, the king asked, is the pole the chariot? No, your majesty, replied Nagasena. Is the axle, the chariot? Number, are the wheels, or the frame, or the ropes, or the yoke, the chariot? No, your majesty. Then, are all of these parts together the chariot? Number? Then is there something else, separate from all these parts, which is the chariot? No, your majesty. Nagasena then explained, your majesty, it is independence on the pole, the axle, the wheels, the frame, and all the other parts, that there arises the convenient designation, the name, chariot. It is a convention. In ultimate reality, there is no chariot, and so it is with the self. In dependence on the five aggregates of body, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, there arises the convenient name, the designation, I. It is a useful fiction. It allows us to navigate the world, to have relationships, to function in society. But it is not an ultimate reality. The self is not a noun. It is a verb. It is a process of selfing, a continuous, moment-to-moment arising and passing of these five interconnected processes. There is no CEO sitting in the boardroom of the mind, directing everything. There is only the dynamic, interdependent functioning of the whole system. Realizing this can, at first, feel disorienting, even frightening. It can feel like the ground is being pulled out from under you. This is why it is crucial to understand what anatta is not. Anatta is not a declaration that you do not exist. Clearly, you are here. Experience is happening. Anatta simply states that you do not exist as a separate, permanent, independent entity. It is also not a statement that life is meaningless. In fact, it opens the door to a far deeper and more interconnected meaning. And it is not a command to annihilate the ego. It is simply an invitation to see through its illusion of solidity, to hold it more lightly. The freedom that comes from this insight is immeasurable. When we loosen our desperate grip on this fictional self, the fear of death begins to lose its power. What we are so afraid of losing was never a solid thing to begin with. The constant anxiety about our reputation, about what others think of me, begins to fade. Praise and blame become less intoxicating and less wounding, because we know they are aimed at a fleeting process, not a permanent core. And most beautifully, as the illusory wall between me and you becomes thinner and more transparent, a natural, unforced compassion arises. We see that your suffering and my suffering, your joy and my joy, arise from the same fundamental processes, the same five aggregates in motion. We have now seen that all of our experience is a flowing, impermanent river, and we have looked for the permanent swimmer in that river, and found only the river itself. We have discovered there is a process, a dance, but no fixed, unchanging dancer. This brings us to another critical and logical question. If there is no permanent self, no single entity who endures through time, then who is it that acts in the world? And who is it that experiences the results of those actions? If I perform a kind deed, but the I of this moment is different from the I of the next moment, who receives the positive result? This apparent paradox forces us to re-examine our understanding of cause and effect, leading us directly to the profound and often misunderstood law of karma. We find ourselves at a crucial juncture in our journey. Our investigation has led us to two truths that, on the surface, seem to contradict each other profoundly. First, through the lens of impermanence, we looked for a solid, unchanging self, and found none. We discovered anatta, the truth that our sense of being a separate, enduring I is a cognitive illusion, and that we are, in reality, a dynamic and interconnected process, a flowing river of body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. This insight is liberating, yet it immediately presents a logical and moral puzzle. For if there is no fixed self, who then acts? Who makes decisions? And most importantly, who is responsible for those decisions? If the I that performs an act of kindness is not the same I that exists a moment later, how can there be any moral continuity? It is here that we encounter the second truth, a law as fundamental as gravity, the law of karma. Far from contradicting the teaching of non-self, the law of karma is its perfect working partner. It is the very engine that drives the river of experience, the moral physics that explains how this selfless process functions with integrity and order. To understand karma is to move from seeing that we are a process, to understanding how that process creates the world we experience. Before we can grasp what karma truly is, we must first clear away the thicket of popular misconceptions that surrounds the term. For many in the West, karma is a misunderstood concept, often seen as a synonym for fate or cosmic revenge. The first thing we must understand is that karma is not fate. It is not the idea that our lives are predetermined, that we are merely puppets acting out a script written long ago. The Buddha's teaching is, in fact, the very opposite of fatalism. It is a radical affirmation of our capacity to shape our own destiny in every moment. Secondly, karma is not a system of reward and punishment meted out by some external, divine judge. There is no cosmic being keeping a ledger of our good and bad deeds, deciding who gets a reward and who gets a punishment. The law of karma is impersonal, unbiased, and natural. It functions like the laws of agriculture. If you plant an apple seed, you get an apple tree. The earth doesn't reward you with an apple, it simply responds to the cause you have set in motion. If you plant the seed of a poisonous weed, you get a poisonous weed. The earth doesn't punish you, it just brings forth the fruit of the seed you have sown. Karma operates with this same natural, impersonal logic. So what then is karma? The Buddha gave a definition that was revolutionary in its simplicity and its focus on the inner world. He said, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind." This is the absolute core of the teaching. Karma is not the result. Karma is the intention behind the action itself. It is the volitional impulse, the conscious or subconscious choice that precedes and colors every single thing we do, say, or think. This shifts the entire focus of morality from the external act to the internal state of the heart and mind. Let us make this clear with an example. Imagine you are walking down a crowded street and you accidentally stumble, bumping into someone and causing them to fall. They may be injured and you may feel regret, but the karmic seed of this action is very light because there was no intention to cause harm. Now, imagine a different scenario. You see someone you dislike, and with a flash of anger, you intentionally shove them, causing them to fall. Even if they are not seriously injured, the karmic seed of this action is heavy and dark because it was born from an intention of ill will. The external results might be similar, but the internal cause, the karma, is worlds apart. This intentional action operates through three doors: the body, speech, and the mind. Actions of the body are the most obvious, our physical deeds. Actions of speech are the words we use, whether they are truthful, kind, and unifying, or false, harsh, and divisive. But the most powerful and subtle door of action is the mind. Every thought we entertain is a form of karma. To sit quietly and cultivate thoughts of anger and revenge is to plant negative karmic seeds, even if we never act on them physically. Conversely, to sit quietly and cultivate thoughts of forgiveness and kindness is to plant wholesome karmic seeds, an act of immense power and beauty. The mind is the forerunner of all things. An action or a word that is born from a mind filled with generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom is called wholesome karma. These actions are like planting the seeds of flowers and fruit trees. They naturally lead to states of peace, happiness, and clarity. An action or a word born from a mind filled with greed, hatred, and delusion is called unwholesome karma. These actions are like planting seeds of thorns and weeds. They naturally lead to states of anxiety, fear, suffering, and confusion. So how does this resolve the paradox of non-self? The continuity is not in the person, but in the stream of causality itself. Imagine lighting one candle from the flame of another. The flame on the second candle is not the same as the flame on the first, and yet it is not entirely different either. It exists only because of the first flame. The transfer of energy is the continuity. In the same way, the state of your mind stream in this moment, with all its karmic tendencies, becomes the direct cause for the state of your mind stream in the next moment. There is no enduring self that travels from moment to moment, only an unbroken stream of cause and effect. The intention you have right now conditions the mind. You will have a moment from now. You are, in every moment, inheriting the karmic stream of your own past actions. This is why the Buddha declared, "All beings are the owners of their karma, the heirs of their karma. They are born of their karma, related to their karma, and abide supported by their karma. Whatever karma they do, for good or for ill, of that they will be the heir." This is not a threat, but the ultimate statement of empowerment. You are not the victim of a random universe or a punishing God. You are the gardener of your own mind, the creator of your own world. The story of the murderer Angulimala illustrates this power of change perfectly. Angulimala was a fearsome bandit who had terrorized a kingdom, murdering so many people that he wore a garland made from their fingers. He was steeped in the most horrific, unwholesome karma imaginable. One day, the Buddha walked calmly and mindfully toward him. Angulimala tried to catch him, but could not. In frustration, he yelled for the Buddha to stop. The Buddha replied, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." These words struck Angulimala to the core. He had not stopped killing, had not stopped creating suffering. In that moment, he threw down his weapons, his intention transformed, and he asked to become a monk. Despite his horrifying past, the power of his present intention was so complete that he was able to change the course of his karmic stream. He eventually became a peaceful, enlightened being. This story is a powerful reminder that our past does not define our future. The karmic seeds we have sown may be there, but we always have a choice in the present moment about which seeds we will water. We can choose to stop cultivating the garden of thorns and begin, right now, to cultivate a garden of flowers. This understanding of karma as a natural law of intention and effect operating within a selfless process is the foundation for a truly ethical and compassionate life. It shows us that our own happiness is inextricably linked to the intentions we hold in our hearts. To wish for our own peace is to recognize the necessity of cultivating peaceful intentions. When we look at others, we see them not as good or bad people, but as beings caught in the same web of cause and effect, acting from their own karmic tendencies, often born from confusion and pain. This seeing does not lead to judgment, but to a profound sense of empathy. It awakens a deep and heartfelt wish, a powerful intention that becomes the foundation for the next stage of our journey. This wish is the desire that not only we, but all beings, might be free from the causes of suffering. It is a wish that all beings might learn to plant seeds of kindness instead of seeds of cruelty. This universal, benevolent intention has a name. It is the beginning of the practice of metta, of unconditional loving kindness. Having journeyed through the profound truths of impermanence and non-self, and having understood the intimate, natural law of karma, we arrive at a place of deep knowing. We see that our own peace and happiness are not random occurrences, but are the direct fruits of the intentions we cultivate in our hearts. We realize that every wholesome thought, every kind word, every generous act is a seed planted for our own future well-being. This understanding naturally gives rise to a powerful motivation. If my happiness depends on the quality of my mind, then it becomes the most urgent and beautiful task of my life to actively cultivate the most wholesome states possible. It is no longer a matter of duty or obligation, but of profound self-care. It is from this fertile ground of wisdom that the practice of metta, or loving kindness, blossoms. Metta is not a feeling that we hope will strike us like lightning. It is a skill, a deliberate and gentle training of the heart. It is the conscious decision to cultivate a boundless, unconditional, and radiant goodwill, a sincere wish for the well-being of ourselves and all living things. It is the sun of our inner world, and learning to let it shine is to transform everything it touches. In our modern lives, we are often besieged by states of mind that contract the heart. Anger, resentment, jealousy, and fear are like cold clamps, tightening around our consciousness, creating a painful and isolating sense of separation. In these states, the world feels hostile, a battleground of me against you, us against them. We build walls around our hearts to protect ourselves, but we soon find that these walls become our prisons. They cut us off from connection, from joy, and from the natural warmth of our own humanity. Metta is the great antidote to these poisons. It is the practice of systematically and intentionally dissolving these walls. Where anger hardens the heart, metta softens it. Where fear creates separation, metta builds bridges. Where resentment holds us captive to the past, metta offers the freedom of a benevolent present. It is a radical act of opening, of returning to our true nature, which is not closed and fearful, but open, vast, and fundamentally connected to all of life. The practice of metta meditation is a journey that unfolds in expanding circles, like ripples on a pond. And that journey must always begin in the very center, with ourselves. For many of us, this is the most difficult step. We are often our own harshest critics, our minds filled with a constant stream of self-judgment and negative talk. We would never speak to a friend the way we often speak to ourselves. But the logic of the heart is simple and unyielding. We cannot genuinely offer to others what we do not possess ourselves. You cannot pour water from an empty cup. To try and wish for others to be happy when you secretly believe you are unworthy of happiness yourself is to build a house on a foundation of sand. Therefore, the bravest and most essential act of loving kindness is to turn that warmth inward. The practice can be very simple. You can find a comfortable posture, gently close your eyes, and perhaps place a hand over your heart to bring a sense of warmth and physical presence to the center of your chest. Then, you silently, gently repeat a few simple phrases, letting the intention behind them be more important than the words themselves. The traditional phrases are, "May I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I live with ease." As you repeat them, you do so with the tenderness you might offer to a beloved child. You are not demanding these things. You are offering a sincere wish, a gentle blessing to your own being. For some, this will feel unnatural or even impossible at first. The inner critic may shout that it is selfish or that you don't deserve it. If this happens, be gentle. The practice is not to fight that voice, but to simply let it be and to continue, as best you can, to offer the phrases. You are planting new seeds in the garden of your mind, and it takes time for them to sprout through the old, hard soil. The simple intention to be kind to yourself is the seed of metta. Once you have established some foundation of warmth for yourself, you begin to expand the circle. The next stage is to bring to mind a benefactor or a dearly loved one. This could be a close friend, a family member, a mentor, or even a pet. Picture this being in your mind's eye and call to mind their inherent goodness, the joy they bring you. Then, just as you did for yourself, you extend the phrases of metta to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Feel the natural warmth and appreciation that flows from your heart. Notice how easy and joyful it feels to wish for the well-being of someone you cherish. Rest in this feeling, letting it grow. After some time, you expand the circle again, this time to include a neutral person. This is someone you might see regularly, but for whom you have no strong feelings either way. The clerk at the post office, a person you see on your morning commute. By including this person in our practice, we are stretching the muscle of the heart, teaching it to extend kindness beyond the limits of personal preference. We see this person not as a role, but as a human being, just like us, who also wishes to be happy and to avoid suffering. We extend the same phrases to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. Now comes the most challenging and transformative stage of the practice. We bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict, someone who has hurt us, or someone whose actions we strongly disapprove of. It is crucial to understand the purpose here. The goal is not to condone their harmful actions or to force an artificial feeling of affection. The goal is to liberate ourselves from the prison of our own resentment. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. We are the one who gets burned. The practice is to, for a moment, see past the actions to the suffering and confusion that causes them. We recognize that this person too, in their own misguided way, is seeking happiness. The wish, may you be happy, becomes a profound prayer. It is a wish that they might become free from the anger, greed, and delusion that makes them act in harmful ways. A happy person does not cause suffering. To wish for their happiness is to wish for them to be healed, for them to become a source of peace instead of pain. This is a supreme act of compassion for ourselves, freeing us from the poison of hatred. Finally, having moved through these stages, we let the circle become infinite. We allow the feeling of metta to radiate outwards from our heart in all directions. We send it to our neighbors, to everyone in our city, our country. We extend it to people we like and people we dislike, to friends and to enemies, to humans and to animals. We visualize this benevolent energy permeating the entire planet, extending out into the universe. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease. In this moment, we are connecting with the deepest aspiration of our heart, a boundless love that makes no distinctions. Lest we think this loving kindness is a weak or sentimental feeling, we should remember the story of the Buddha and the raging elephant, Nalagiri. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, arranged to have a ferocious elephant intoxicated and let loose on the path where the Buddha was walking, intending for it to kill him. As the elephant charged, trumpeting with rage, the Buddha's followers panicked. But the Buddha remained perfectly calm. He did not run, nor did he raise a weapon. He simply stood his ground and radiated a powerful, unwavering field of pure metta towards the enraged animal. The elephant, a creature of immense physical power, was completely overcome by the even greater power of the Buddha's loving kindness. It slowed its charge, came to a halt before the Buddha, and bowed its head in submission. This story teaches us that metta is not passive. It is a force, a tangible energy that can pacify the most violent states, both within ourselves and in the world around us. It is the strength of the sun, which does not need to use force to melt the hardest ice. The practice of metta, then, is a returning home. It is a daily cultivation of the heart's noblest quality. It is a recognition that deep down, beneath all the fear and conditioning, our true nature is one of boundless, open-hearted connection. We learn to become a safe space for ourselves and for the world. But what happens when this soft, open, loving heart, now trained in wishing for the happiness of all, encounters a being who is in the midst of active pain and suffering? The wish for happiness then transforms. It becomes an active trembling of the heart, an urgent desire to step in and alleviate the pain. This responsive quality, this movement from benevolent wishing to active caring, has its own name. It is the birth of karuna, or compassion. Through the gentle, dedicated practice of metta, we have trained our hearts to open. We have learned to wish for our own well-being and to radiate that same benevolent wish outwards in ever-expanding circles, dissolving the walls that separate us from others. Our heart, once perhaps guarded and contracted, has begun to soften and relax, discovering its own innate capacity for a boundless, unconditional goodwill. This open heart is a tremendous achievement, a source of profound inner peace, but it is also exquisitely sensitive. And so, the inevitable question arises: what happens when this soft and open heart, now wishing for the happiness of all beings, turns its gaze upon the world and encounters the undeniable reality of suffering? What is the heart's response when it meets with pain, loss, fear, and sorrow? It is in this meeting that loving kindness undergoes a beautiful and powerful transformation. It evolves into karuna, or compassion. If metta is the wish for all beings to find cool, clear water to drink, karuna is the heart's trembling response upon seeing a being dying of thirst. It is the moment our benevolent wish becomes an active, engaged, and urgent caring. It is the heart's promise not to turn away from pain. To truly understand compassion, we must first distinguish it from what are known as its near enemies, states of mind that look similar on the surface but are fundamentally different in their nature and effect. The most common near enemy of compassion is pity. From the outside, pity can look like caring. We see someone suffering and we say, "Oh, that poor person, I feel so sorry for them." But if we look closely at the energy of pity, we will find that it is rooted in a sense of separation and superiority. When we pity someone, we are implicitly creating a hierarchy. I am up here, fortunate and stable, and you are down there, unfortunate and suffering. Pity reinforces the wall between us and them. It keeps the other person's pain at a safe distance. Compassion, on the other hand, is radical empathy. It is based on a recognition of equality. It demolishes the wall between self and other. The compassionate heart looks at a suffering being and says, "Not poor you, but I understand." It recognizes that the pain, fear, and longing for release that this being is feeling is the same pain, fear, and longing that I have felt in my own heart. Your suffering resonates in me. We are in this together. Compassion closes the distance that pity creates. Another near enemy is overwhelming grief or despair. When we are confronted with immense suffering, either personally or in the world, it is easy to become completely flooded by sorrow. This feeling, while understandable, is not true compassion. It is a state of contraction, of being drowned by the pain. It often leads to paralysis, a feeling of being so helpless and heartbroken that we shut down. True compassion, karuna, is spacious. It has the strength to be with pain without being consumed by it. It is a tender heart, but it is also a brave heart. It can hold the reality of suffering in a vast, loving awareness that does not collapse. It is this spaciousness that allows compassion to be a source of strength and action, rather than a cause of burnout and despair. At its core, true compassion is an alchemy of two of the great qualities of the awakened mind: wisdom and love. The wisdom aspect of compassion, or prajna, is the ability to see suffering clearly, to look at it directly without flinching or turning away in fear. It is the fruit of our mindfulness practice, the clarity that allows us to acknowledge the first noble truth, reality of dukkha in all its forms. The love aspect of compassion is metta, the boundless, unconditional goodwill we have already cultivated. It is the sincere wish for all beings to be happy and free from the causes of unhappiness. Karuna is what happens when these two forces meet. When the clear eye of wisdom sees suffering, and the warm heart of metta feels a wish for that suffering to end, the result is compassion. It is this union of clear seeing and deep caring that makes compassion so powerful. It is not a blind, sentimental feeling, nor is it a cold, detached analysis. It is the full, engaged response of a whole and integrated human being to the reality of life. Like metta, karuna is a quality that can be intentionally cultivated. We can train our hearts to become more responsive and compassionate through dedicated practice. The method is similar, but the focus shifts from happiness to suffering. We can begin by bringing to mind a person or an animal that we know is currently in pain. It could be a friend struggling with an illness, a family member experiencing a loss, or even an image from the news of people caught in a difficult situation. We allow ourselves to gently contemplate the reality of their suffering. We don't need to dwell on the graphic details, but we acknowledge the truth of their pain, their fear, their loneliness. We let our heart connect with their experience. Then, we connect with their deepest wish. We recognize that, just like us, all this being wants is to be free from their suffering. They yearn for peace, for safety, for relief. This recognition of a shared, universal aspiration is the bridge that connects our heart to theirs. Having made this connection, we then formulate the compassionate intention. We silently repeat phrases such as, "May you be free from this suffering. May you be free from this pain. May your heart find peace." We feel this wish as a genuine energy, a gentle stream of healing intention flowing from our heart to theirs. We are not trying to magically fix their problems, but we are training our own heart to respond with love instead of fear or indifference. As we become more stable in this practice, we can gradually widen the circle. We can extend our compassion to people we don't know, to those in hospitals and war zones, to the countless beings, human and animal, who are experiencing physical or mental pain right now. We hold the immense suffering of the world in our hearts, not with despair, but with a vast, tender, and courageous compassion, wishing for all to be free. In Mahayana Buddhism, this ideal of perfect compassion is embodied in the figure of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. Avalokiteshvara is often depicted with 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes. This is not a literal description, but a powerful metaphor for the nature of true compassion. The 1,000 eyes represent the boundless wisdom that is able to perceive all the different forms of suffering throughout the universe. The 1,000 arms represent the boundless, skillful means to respond to that suffering, with each hand holding a different tool to help. Avalokiteshvara represents the active, fearless, and endlessly creative nature of a heart that has fully awakened to its compassionate potential. It reminds us that compassion is not a passive feeling, but an active engagement with the world. Of course, opening our hearts to the world's pain carries a risk. For those in caring professions, or for anyone who is deeply empathetic, the danger of compassion fatigue is very real. We can become so burdened by the suffering we witness that we burn out, becoming cynical or simply shutting down to protect ourselves. This is why compassion must be balanced and protected by its vital companion, equanimity, or upekkha. Equanimity is the spacious, unshakable wisdom that understands the vastness of cause and effect, the law of karma. It allows us to care deeply and to act where we can, while also accepting that we cannot control everything. It is the wisdom that keeps our heart open, even when we cannot fix the problem. Equanimity prevents compassion from turning into overwhelming grief. It provides the vast, stable container in which the tender heart of compassion can do its work without being shattered. Karuna, then, is the brave and tender response of an open heart to the reality of suffering. It is the embodiment of our interconnectedness, the felt sense that your pain is also my pain. It moves us from being passive spectators of life to being active participants in its healing. We have now learned to train the heart to meet the world with a wish for its happiness through metta, and to meet its pain with a wish for its relief through karuna. But what of life's other great dimension? What is the heart's response when we witness not suffering, but joy, success, and good fortune? In a culture so often driven by comparison and envy, the path offers another radical practice, the cultivation of a heart that can rejoice in the happiness of others as if it were its own. This is the practice of mudita, or sympathetic joy. We have walked the path of the open heart, learning to meet the world with boundless loving kindness, metta, and to respond to its suffering with the trembling, active care of compassion, karuna. These practices train us to face life with a courageous and tender presence. We have learned to wish for the happiness of all, and to wish for the freedom from suffering for all. But our experience of the world is not limited to suffering. Life, in its infinite complexity, is also filled with moments of grace, beauty, success, and joy. This brings us to a crucial question, one that tests the generosity of our spirit in a very different way. What is our heart's response when we witness not pain, but happiness? What happens inside us when we see others succeed, thrive, and experience good fortune? It is here, in this bright and often challenging territory, that we are invited to cultivate the third of the four sublime states, the practice of mudita, or sympathetic joy. If metta is the radiant sun of goodwill, and karuna is the gentle rain of compassion, then mudita is the shared warmth that makes the whole garden grow, a joy that is not diminished, but multiplied, when shared. In our modern, competitive culture, mudita may be the most radical and revolutionary practice of all. We are subtly, and often overtly, conditioned to view success as a limited resource. We live in the shadow of a deeply ingrained scarcity mindset. This mindset tells us that happiness is a zero-sum game. If someone else gets a promotion, there is one less promotion available for me. If someone else is praised for their talent, it somehow diminishes my own. If someone else finds a wonderful relationship, it highlights my own loneliness. This belief system is the fertile ground for the painful states of envy and jealousy. Envy is the feeling of poverty in the face of another's wealth. Whether that wealth is material, relational, or spiritual, it is a cold, contracting feeling, a knot in the stomach that whispers, "Why them, and not me?" It is the pain of comparison. In the age of social media, this has become a silent epidemic. We scroll through a perfectly curated highlight reel of other people's lives, a constant stream of engagements, exotic vacations, beautiful homes, and happy families. This endless parade of success can easily trigger our own feelings of inadequacy and lack, leaving us feeling diminished and alone. This suffering arises directly from the illusion of the separate self, the ego we explored in our discussion of anatta. The ego lives by comparison. It constantly measures itself against others, seeking to establish its worth by being better than, smarter than, or more successful than those around it. When it perceives another's success, it feels threatened, as if its own status has been lowered. It believes that happiness is a finite pie, and every slice someone else takes is a slice that is no longer available for us. Mudita is the practice that shatters this painful illusion. It is the antidote to the poison of envy. It is rooted in the wisdom of interconnectedness, the understanding that we are not separate, competing entities, but are all part of one vast, interwoven web of existence. From this perspective, your happiness is not a threat to my happiness. Your joy does not diminish the world's supply of joy. On the contrary, your happiness adds to the sum total of well-being in the universe. And because I am a part of that universe, your joy is also, in a very real way, my joy. Mudita reveals the profound truth that happiness is not a limited commodity to be hoarded. It is an infinite, renewable resource. It is like light. When you use your candle to light another's, your own flame is not diminished. In fact, the total amount of light in the room doubles. Sympathetic joy is the practice of delighting in lighting other people's candles. It is the discovery that we have access to an unlimited source of happiness, a source that is available to us at any moment, completely free of charge. Our capacity for joy is no longer restricted to the narrow, infrequent moments of our own personal triumphs. Suddenly, the entire world becomes a potential source of happiness for us. Every success story we hear, every beautiful piece of art we see, every loving couple we encounter, every joyful child we watch at play becomes a reason for our own heart to feel glad. To cultivate mudita is to transform from a pauper, jealously guarding a few crumbs of personal happiness, into a monarch, capable of rejoicing in the vast riches of the entire kingdom. The practice of cultivating mudita follows a similar path to metta, starting where it is easy and gradually expanding outwards. You can begin by bringing to mind a person for whom you feel great affection and who has recently experienced some form of good fortune. It could be a friend who has achieved a long sought-after goal, a child who has mastered a new skill, or a sibling who is filled with the joy of a new relationship. Instead of letting this be a passing thought, you hold it intentionally in your mind and heart. You picture their happiness, you feel their delight, and you consciously rejoice with them. You can use silent phrases to guide your intention. My friend, I am so happy for you. I rejoice in your good fortune. May your happiness and success continue. May your joy increase. Allow yourself to feel the genuine warmth that this brings to your own heart. Notice that there is no cost to this joy. It is a pure gain. Once you have practiced with a loved one, you can stretch the muscle of mudita by extending it to a neutral person. This might be a colleague at work who receives praise, an acquaintance you see at the gym who has clearly made progress, or even an artist or public figure whose work you admire. The default reaction might be indifference, or perhaps a slight twinge of comparison. The practice is to consciously override this default and choose to rejoice. How wonderful for them. They have worked hard for that. I am happy that they are experiencing success. You are training your mind to see happiness anywhere as a positive event, regardless of its connection to you. The most advanced practice, of course, is to extend mudita to someone you might perceive as a rival or someone whose success has triggered envy in you in the past. This is immensely difficult, and it requires great honesty and gentleness. The first step is simply to acknowledge the feeling of envy without judgment. Ah, there is envy. Then, see if it is possible to shift the perspective, even slightly. Can you appreciate the effort they put in? Can you acknowledge that they, like you, are simply seeking happiness? Can you find even a tiny part of you that is able to say, I see your happiness and I wish you well? This is a profound act of letting go of the ego. It is a direct path to inner freedom. It is important to be aware of the near enemy of mudita, which is a kind of vicarious, self-referential excitement. For example, a parent might feel immense joy at their child's success, but if that joy is primarily about how the success reflects on them as a parent, it is not pure mudita. Or we might rejoice in our favorite sports team's victory because it inflates our own sense of identity. True mudita is selfless. It is the appreciation of joy for its own sake, wherever it appears. By cultivating mudita, we become alchemists of the heart. We learn to transform the lead of envy into the gold of shared joy. We step out of the cramped, lonely prison of comparison and into the wide, open, sunlit field of shared humanity. Our lives become richer, our hearts lighter, and our capacity for happiness expands beyond the narrow boundaries of our own personal story. We have now explored the three great active virtues of the heart: the wish for all beings to be happy, metta; the trembling response to their suffering, karuna; and the joyful celebration of their well-being, mudita. These three sublime states create a heart that is open, engaged, and deeply loving. But such intense feelings, even positive ones, can be destabilizing. Metta can become clinging attachment. Karuna can collapse into despair. Mudita can morph into giddy excitement. What is the essential, grounding quality that holds all of these beautiful emotions in a perfect, unshakable balance? What is the force that allows the heart to love limitlessly, feel deeply, and rejoice freely without ever losing its center? This foundation, this profound and peaceful poise at the heart of all things, is the fourth and final sublime state, upekkha, or equanimity. We have journeyed together through the sublime landscapes of the heart, learning to cultivate the boundless warmth of loving kindness, the tender response of compassion, and the selfless delight of sympathetic joy. These three practices, metta, karuna, and mudita, teach us to engage with the world with a spirit of profound love, care, and celebration. They are the radiant expressions of an open and connected heart. Yet, anyone who has sincerely practiced these states knows that they carry their own subtle dangers. Our loving kindness can curdle into clinging attachment and grief when the object of our love is lost. Our compassion can collapse into overwhelming despair in the face of immense suffering. Our sympathetic joy can become a form of agitated excitement, losing its peaceful grounding. The heart, in its loving engagement with the world, needs an anchor. It needs a vast, stable foundation that allows it to love fully, feel deeply, and rejoice freely, without ever being swept away. This anchor, this profound and peaceful poise at the very center of life's storms, is the fourth and final sublime state. It is the pinnacle of the heart's training, and its great protector. It is upekkha, or equanimity. To understand equanimity, we must first clear away a profound and common misunderstanding. For many, the word equanimity conjures an image of cold indifference, of a detached and unfeeling aloofness. This could not be further from the truth. Indifference is a state of contraction, a closing down of the heart. It is a form of aversion, a refusal to feel or to care. Upekkha, or equanimity, is the absolute opposite. It is the result of a heart that has become so open, so vast, and so unconditionally loving that it has room for everything. It is a state of radical inclusion. It does not mean you stop feeling. In fact, with true equanimity, you feel everything more fully, but you are no longer identified with the passing waves of emotion. You feel the sting of pain, but you know you are not the pain. You feel the elation of joy, but you know you are not the joy. You are the deep, silent, peaceful ocean, and the emotions are simply weather patterns passing across your surface. Equanimity is not numbness. It is the most profound and spacious kind of sensitivity. It is born not of coldness, but of the deepest warmth and wisdom. The terrain where equanimity is most needed is the battlefield of our daily lives, a place where we are constantly buffeted by what Buddhism calls the 8 worldly winds. These are the unavoidable ups and downs of human existence, which blow continuously, pushing and pulling at the untrained mind. They come in 4 pairs of opposites. The first pair is pleasure and pain. Our lives are a constant flow of pleasant and unpleasant sensations, both physical and emotional. The second pair is gain and loss. We acquire possessions, relationships, and status, and then we inevitably lose them. The third pair is praise and blame. We are subject to the ever-shifting opinions of others, one day celebrated, the next day criticized. And the fourth pair is fame and disrepute. Our reputation in the world rises and falls. The ordinary mind is like a leaf caught in these 8 winds, utterly at their mercy. It soars high on the winds of praise, gain, and pleasure, only to be dashed to the ground by the winds of blame, loss, and pain. To live this way is to be a slave to circumstance, our inner peace constantly held hostage by external events. Equanimity is the practice of becoming the mountain, not the leaf. The winds still blow, sometimes as gentle breezes, sometimes as violent gales, but the mountain remains stable, grounded, and unmoved in its core. It allows the weather to happen without becoming the weather. This unshakable stability does not come from sheer willpower, from gritting our teeth and resisting life. It arises naturally from the deep, embodied understanding of the truths we have already explored. It is wisdom in action. The first root of equanimity is a profound insight into impermanence, anicca. When you truly know, not just intellectually but in your bones, that everything changes, you are no longer shocked or destabilized when it does. The pleasure of a wonderful meal will end. The pain of a headache will pass. The flush of success from a project will fade. The sting of a harsh word will dissolve. Knowing this, we learn to hold our experiences more lightly. We don't cling so desperately to the pleasant because we know it is fleeting, and we don't fall into despair over the unpleasant because we know it too shall pass. This deep trust in the nature of change creates a spaciousness around our experiences, allowing us to remain balanced amidst the flow. The second root of equanimity is the wisdom of non-self, anatta. When we begin to loosen our identification with a solid, separate, and vulnerable I, the 8 worldly winds lose much of their power. Who is this I that is being praised? It is a temporary collection of body, feelings, and thoughts. Who is this I that is being blamed? It is also a fleeting process. When we are less invested in defending and promoting this fictional self, the opinions of others no longer feel like life or death verdicts. They become just what they are, the conditioned thoughts of another conditioned being. This insight creates a powerful buffer, a zone of peace around the tender ego. And the third root of equanimity is a deep trust in the law of karma. This is the wisdom that allows us to distinguish between what we can control and what we cannot. We can control our intentions. We can choose to act with kindness, integrity, and wisdom in every situation. We cannot, however, control the final outcome. The results of our actions depend on an infinitely complex web of causes and conditions, far beyond our command. Equanimity is the peace that comes from doing our best, from planting the wholesome seeds of good intention, and then relinquishing our attachment to the harvest. We act with a full heart, and then we let go. The direct practice of upekkha is one of mindful observation and gentle release. It is watching the 8 winds blow through your life and choosing not to be carried away. When someone praises you, notice the pleasant feeling that arises. Enjoy it, but don't cling to it. Say to yourself, this is just a pleasant feeling. It is impermanent. When someone criticizes you, notice the painful sting. Allow the feeling to be there, but don't fuel it with stories of anger and self-pity. Simply observe it as a painful sensation and know, this too will pass. The mantra of equanimity, repeated silently in the heart, might be, I will meet all of life's changes with a balanced mind and an open heart. We learn to rest in a place of non-preference, caring deeply about our actions but remaining impartial to the results. There is a famous story of an old Zen master. One day, his neighbors came to him, bringing gifts and praising his wisdom. He simply listened, nodded, and said, "Is that so?" A week later, a rumor spread, and the same neighbors returned, shouting insults and accusing him of terrible things. He listened calmly, nodded, and said, "Is that so?" His inner peace was not dependent on their shifting opinions. He was not identified with the character they projected onto him. He remained in his center, unmoved. His equanimity was his freedom. Upekkha is the great protector of the other three sublime states. It ensures that our loving kindness does not become selfish attachment, that our compassion does not become disabling grief, and that our sympathetic joy does not become restless excitement. It is the vast, quiet space that holds them all, allowing them to be pure, boundless, and effective. It is the culmination of the training of the heart. To cultivate equanimity is to find the still point of the turning world. It is the end of our exhausting war with reality, and the beginning of a profound peace that cannot be shaken by the changing fortunes of life. It is the ultimate freedom. Having now explored this complete and balanced training of the heart, we are equipped with an extraordinary inner toolkit. We have learned to cultivate a mind that is loving, compassionate, joyful, and stable. We are now prepared to take this integrated understanding and apply it directly to the most powerful and challenging emotional storms we face, to the fires of anger and the icy grip of fear that so often hijack our peace and cause immense suffering for ourselves and others. We are ready to learn how to meet them, not with reactivity, but with this newfound wisdom and grace. We have now meticulously constructed the inner sanctuary of the heart. We have laid the unshakable foundation of equanimity, and within its strong, supportive walls, we have cultivated the beautiful, life-affirming qualities of loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. Our inner home is strong, spacious, and filled with light. And yet, we do not live in a vacuum. Life will inevitably send its powerful storms, and the most challenging of these are often not the external events themselves, but the turbulent emotional storms they trigger within us. Among these, two stand out for their intensity and their potential to cause immense harm: the searing fire of anger and the icy grip of fear. For most of us, our relationship with these powerful energies is one of conflict. We typically respond in one of two unskillful ways. The first is suppression. We feel the heat of anger or the chill of fear rising, and we judge it as bad or unspiritual. We use all our strength to push it down, to lock it in the basement of our consciousness, pretending it isn't there. But suppressed energy does not disappear. It turns inward, poisoning our peace, creating anxiety, and often erupting later with even greater, uncontrolled force. The second unskillful path is unrestrained expression. We identify completely with the emotion and let it take over, lashing out with angry words, acting on our fear impulsively, and spreading the fire of our own suffering to those around us. Both paths lead to more pain. The wisdom of the Buddhist path offers a third way. It is a middle path, not of suppression or indulgence, but of transformation through mindful, compassionate engagement. It teaches us how to make friends with our demons, and in doing so, to rob them of their power. The first and most crucial step in this process is to fundamentally reframe our relationship with these emotions. We must stop seeing anger and fear as enemies to be vanquished, and start seeing them as messengers to be understood. They are raw, powerful forms of energy that carry vital information about our inner world. Anger, for all its destructive potential, is often a distorted expression of a deep and noble protective instinct. It flares up when something we value feels threatened: our physical safety, our sense of dignity, the well-being of a loved one, or our core sense of justice. It is a signal, a loud, blaring alarm bell telling us that a boundary has been crossed or that a deep wound has been touched. The problem is not the energy of the alarm bell itself, but our habit of identifying with its noise so completely that we become the alarm. The message gets lost in the reactivity. Fear is also a messenger. It is the mind's ancient survival mechanism, brilliantly designed to protect us from danger. While we may no longer be running from saber-toothed tigers, this system is now often triggered by threats to our modern self, our ego. We feel fear at the prospect of public speaking, at the risk of financial loss, at the possibility of rejection. Fear is a bright, shining arrow that points directly to our attachments. It shows us precisely what we are clinging to, what we believe we cannot live without. By viewing anger and fear as messengers, we shift from being their victim to becoming a curious and compassionate investigator. We can ask, what are you trying to protect? What are you afraid of losing? With this new understanding, we can approach the energy with a clear, practical method. Let us first take anger. The next time you feel that familiar heat rising in your chest, that tightening in your jaw, you can apply this 5-step process. The first step is the most important. Stop. The moment you recognize anger, pause. Do not speak. Do not send the email. Do not type the comment. Just for a second, interrupt the habitual, lightning-fast pathway from feeling to reaction. This sacred pause is the birthplace of freedom. The second step is to breathe. Deliberately bring your full attention to the physical sensation of your breath. Feel the cool air coming in through your nostrils and the warm air leaving. This simple act anchors you in your body and in the present moment. It begins to soothe the agitated nervous system, turning down the volume on the alarm. The third step is to acknowledge and name the emotion. Silently in your own mind, you say, anger is here. I see you, anger. This is a profoundly important shift. You are not saying, I am angry. This phrase implies a solid, total identification. By saying, anger is here, you frame it as a temporary visitor, a weather pattern passing through the vast sky of your awareness. It is an event, not your identity. This creates a space of clarity between the observer and the observed. The fourth step is to explore the anger as a physical sensation. Where does it live in your body? Is it a burning in your stomach, a pressure behind your eyes, a clenching in your fists? Without getting lost in the story of why you are angry, simply investigate the raw, physical energy of the emotion. Be a scientist of your inner experience. You will notice that these sensations are not static. They pulse, they shift, they change. You are witnessing the impermanence of anger firsthand. The fifth and final step is the most transformative. It is to embrace the anger with compassion. We now bring the skill of metta to bear on this difficult energy. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught to hold your anger like a mother holds her crying baby. She doesn't get angry at the baby for crying. She doesn't try to suppress the crying. She picks the baby up, holds it tenderly, and tries to understand what it needs. In the same way, you can silently say to your anger, I am here for you. I will take care of you. I see that you are suffering. You are offering your own powerful, difficult emotion, the gift of your non-judgmental, loving presence. This act of inner kindness is the alchemy that transforms the poison into medicine. The anger, feeling seen and held, begins to lose its violent charge, revealing the vulnerable, wounded place underneath that it was trying to protect. We can apply a very similar process to the experience of fear. When you feel that cold, contracting sensation, that frantic energy in the mind, you begin by stopping and breathing, anchoring yourself in the present. You acknowledge, fear is here. I recognize you. You feel it in your body, the shallow breathing, the racing heart, and you hold it with that same motherly compassion. I am here for you, fear. I will not abandon you. The practice then deepens with a gentle inquiry. From this place of calm presence, you can ask the fear a question. What are you truly afraid of? What is it that you think you will lose? The answer often reveals a deep attachment, a clinging to a particular outcome, a reputation, or a sense of security. By seeing this attachment clearly, through the wise lens of impermanence, we understand that what we fear losing was never a solid, permanent thing to begin with. The fear's grip begins to loosen, not because we have fought it, but because we have understood it. Thich Nhat Hanh offered a beautiful parable for this practice. He said we should learn to invite our anger to tea. When anger knocks on the door of our consciousness, we don't pretend we are not home, suppression, nor do we fling the door open and let it storm in and smash all our furniture, unrestrained expression. Instead, we open the door calmly and say, hello, anger, my old friend. I see you have come to visit. Please, come in, sit down. I will put the kettle on and we can have a cup of tea together. In this parable, you are the host. You are in charge. You are treating the powerful emotion with respect. giving it your mindful attention, listening to its message. The anger, feeling welcomed and heard instead of being fought or indulged, begins to calm down. It drinks its tea, tells you what boundary was crossed or what pain was touched, and then, its job done, it politely leaves. This is the art of emotional alchemy. It is a form of spiritual aikido where we do not meet force with force. We meet the powerful, aggressive energy of anger and fear with the soft, yielding, and ultimately invincible power of mindfulness and compassion. We learn to stay present, to listen, and to hold our own inner experience with a kindness that is deeply healing. This is not a quick fix, but a lifelong practice in courage, wisdom, and self-love. Having learned to navigate these powerful storms within our own hearts, we are now far better equipped to deal with conflict and harmony in the world outside. We can now take this ability to listen deeply and respond with compassion, and apply it to the complex, beautiful, and often challenging dance of our relationships with others. Having learned to meet the powerful storms within our own minds with mindfulness and compassion, we now turn our gaze outwards to the most fertile, most challenging, and most rewarding ground for spiritual practice, our relationships with others. It is in our interactions with our partners, our families, our friends, and our colleagues that the rubber of our practice truly meets the road of our lives. Relationships are the great mirrors. They reflect back to us our deepest attachments, our hidden fears, our habitual patterns of reactivity, and our greatest capacities for love and wisdom. It is often within these connections that we experience both our most profound joys and our most acute sorrows. The Buddhist path does not offer a set of rigid rules or a simple formula for the perfect relationship. Instead, it offers a set of powerful tools and a radical shift in perspective that can transform the very foundation of how we connect with others. It teaches us that the goal is not to change the other person, but to bring awareness, clarity, and boundless love into the sacred space that exists between you. The first and most fundamental skill in this practice is that of deep listening. So much of our relational conflict stems from a simple, tragic fact. We do not truly hear one another. We engage in what is often a series of competing monologues. While the other person is speaking, we are not truly listening. Instead, we are busy formulating our rebuttal, preparing our defense, judging their words through the filter of our own past experiences, or simply waiting for our turn to speak. Deep listening, as taught by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, is a form of meditation, a practice of offering your complete and undivided presence to another human being. The sole purpose of deep listening is to help the other person suffer less. It is a gift of profound compassion. To practice it, you set aside your own agenda. You put down your phone, turn away from your screen, and offer the entirety of your attention. You listen without interrupting, without judging, without analyzing. You listen not only to the words being spoken, but to the silence between the words. You listen for the emotion that is being carried on the current of their speech. You listen with the ears of the heart, with the single intention of understanding the suffering and the aspirations of the person before you. To be heard in this way is a rare and precious gift. It can dissolve mountains of anger and misunderstanding because it communicates a powerful message. You matter. Your suffering matters. I am here for you. The natural companion to deep listening is loving speech. This is the application of the principle of right speech, or Chan Ungur, to our intimate connections. It is the practice of using our words not as weapons to win arguments or to wound, but as instruments to heal, to build trust, and to communicate our own truth with clarity and kindness. Before we speak, especially in moments of conflict, we can practice pausing and asking ourselves 3 questions. Are these words I am about to say true? Are they kind? And are they necessary? Loving speech is, first and foremost, truthful, but it understands that truth spoken without kindness can be a form of violence. It seeks to express our feelings and needs honestly, but in a way that the other person can actually hear. Loving speech is also gentle speech. It refrains from the use of harsh, blaming, or critical language that puts the other person on the defensive and shuts down communication. And finally, it is meaningful speech. It avoids gossip or words that would sow discord, and instead aims to use language to nourish the connection and deepen understanding. Deep listening and loving speech together create a circle of safe and compassionate communication, a space where both people feel seen, heard, and respected. Beyond these essential skills, Buddhist wisdom offers a profound shift in how we see the other person. This is where the insights of impermanence, anicca, and non-self, anatta, become intensely practical. We learn to see the other person not as a fixed, solid, and predictable entity, but as a flowing river, just like ourselves. The partner or friend who angered you yesterday is not the exact same person today. Their thoughts, feelings, and selves are all in a state of constant flux. Holding on to a grudge is like being angry at a river for a stone that it carried past you yesterday. Understanding this allows for forgiveness, for growth, and for the possibility of change. It also reminds us to cherish the beautiful moments, knowing that they too are impermanent and precious. Even more powerfully, we can learn to see the other person through the compassionate lens of non-self and dukkha. When your partner is irritable, when your parent is critical, when your friend is withdrawn, the habitual reaction is to take it personally. We think, what have I done wrong? Why are they doing this to me? This self-centered view is a source of immense pain. The wisdom of non-self invites a different perspective. It allows us to see that the other person is a complex, conditioned process of the five aggregates. Their difficult behavior is not a personal attack, but an expression of their own suffering, their own dukkha. Their anger is their own fire burning them. Their fear is their own prison confining them. When we can see this, our entire internal response shifts. The question changes from "how could you do this to me?" to the compassionate inquiry. What suffering is alive in you right now that is causing you to speak or act in this way? This shift, from taking it personally to seeing their pain, drains the anger and resentment from the situation and opens the door for genuine compassion to arise. Much of our suffering in relationships also comes from the fact that we are not in a relationship with the actual person in front of us, but with a projection, an image of that person we carry in our own minds. We project our hopes for a savior, our fears of abandonment, our checklist of the perfect partner onto them. Then, when they inevitably fail to live up to this fictional character we have created, we become angry and disappointed. The practice here is to use mindfulness to notice when we are interacting with our idea of the person, rather than the person themselves. It is the gentle, continuous practice of letting go of our expectations and our stories, and returning to the reality of this complex, imperfect, and beautiful human being who is sharing this moment of life with us. Ultimately, the Buddhist path describes true, healthy love as the embodiment of the four sublime states we have been exploring. Loving kindness, metta, is the ability to offer happiness. It is the simple capacity to look at the person you love and ask, "What can I do today to nourish your joy?" Compassion, karuna, is the ability to understand and transform suffering. It is the presence that says, "I see you are in pain, and I am here for you. We will face this together." Sympathetic joy, mudita, is the ability to rejoice in their happiness. It is the selfless delight that declares, "Your happiness is my happiness. Your success does not diminish me, it enriches my life." And equanimity, upekkha, is the ability to offer freedom. It is the spacious, non-possessive love that respects the other's autonomy and does not try to control them. It is the love that says, "I love you deeply, and I offer you the space to be exactly who you are." To bring these qualities into our relationships is a lifelong practice. It is the work of tending to a garden, requiring patience, diligence, and a tender hand. It is not about finding a perfect person who will never cause us pain, but about cultivating the inner resources to meet every moment of connection, both joyful and difficult, with a wise and open heart. Our relationships, however, exist within a wider context and are often strained by the pressures and values of the world around us. One of the most powerful of these pressures is the relentless societal drive towards materialism and consumption, a force that often promises happiness but delivers something else entirely. We have explored the intricate art of cultivating wholesome relationships, of bringing mindfulness and compassion into the sacred space we share with others. Yet, our relationships do not exist in a bubble. They are deeply influenced and often profoundly strained by the values of the culture in which they are embedded. And in our modern Western society, No value is more pervasive, more relentlessly promoted than the belief that happiness is a commodity that can be purchased. From the moment we are born, we are immersed in a sea of messages that equate self-worth with net worth and fulfillment with consumption. We are told that the right car will bring us freedom, the right watch will bring us respect, the right phone will bring us connection, and the right house will bring us security and peace. This grand promise, the central tenet of materialism, forms the unquestioned backdrop of many of our lives. But the Buddhist path, with its gentle and penetrating wisdom, invites us to pause and ask a simple, radical question. Is it true? Does this endless pursuit of more, this constant striving for the next acquisition, actually lead to a deep and lasting happiness? Or is it, perhaps, the very source of our discontent? To investigate this, we need only look at our own direct experience. The pattern is so familiar that we often fail to see it clearly. It begins with a feeling of lack, a subtle but persistent sense of dissatisfaction. This feeling is then focused onto a specific object of desire, a desire often manufactured for us by clever marketing and social comparison. We become convinced that acquiring this one thing, this new gadget, this piece of clothing, this luxury vacation is the key to our happiness. So we strive for it. We work longer hours, we take on debt, we dedicate our precious life energy to its acquisition. Then comes the moment of purchase. There is a brief thrill, a rush of dopamine, a temporary feeling of wholeness and excitement. We have filled the perceived lack, but what happens next? Invariably, the magic fades. The novelty wears off. The new car becomes just the car, another vehicle that gets stuck in traffic. The designer dress hangs in the closet, its glamour diminished. The beautiful vacation becomes a fading memory. This is a perfect, real-world demonstration of what the Buddha called hoai dukkha, the suffering that is inherent in all pleasant but impermanent experiences. The pleasure does not last, and when it fades, the original underlying feeling of lack returns, often even stronger than before. And so, the mind, still believing the promise, simply latches onto a new object, a new desire, thinking, that last thing didn't work, but this next thing surely will. This is the hedonic treadmill, a cycle of endless chasing that guarantees we are always wanting and never truly arriving. It is a formula for perpetual dissatisfaction. The Buddhist path offers a way to step off this exhausting treadmill. It offers an alternative founded not on acquiring more, but on needing less. This is the principle of contentment, or santuti in the Pali language. It is crucial to understand that contentment is not the same as forced austerity or poverty. The Buddha's path is a middle way, avoiding the extremes of both self-mortification and sensual indulgence. The goal is not the elimination of possessions, but the elimination of the craving for possessions. It is the inner freedom that comes from being happy with what one has, rather than being constantly tormented by what one lacks. Contentment is the radical, revolutionary realization that our well-being is not dependent on external conditions. It is an inner wealth, a profound sense of enoughness that arises from within. It is the discovery that we already possess everything we truly need to be happy. How do we cultivate such a state in a world that is constantly telling us we are not enough? The primary practice for developing contentment is the cultivation of gratitude. Gratitude is the conscious act of turning the mind's attention away from the imagined poverty of what is missing and towards the immense, unacknowledged riches of what is already present. It is a practice that can, and should, be woven into the fabric of our daily lives. You can begin or end each day by taking just a few moments to reflect on the things for which you are grateful. At first, you might think of the big things: a loving family, a steady job, a safe place to live. This is a wonderful start, but the practice deepens when you begin to notice the small, miraculous, and often overlooked gifts of everyday life. Can you feel gratitude for the simple fact that your body is breathing on its own? A silent, faithful rhythm that has sustained you every moment of your life? Can you feel gratitude for the clean water that flows from your tap? A luxury unknown to billions of people. Can you feel gratitude for the taste of your morning coffee, the warmth of a blanket, the sound of birdsong outside your window, the simple existence of the sky? To practice gratitude is to actively retrain the neural pathways of the brain. The mind has a natural negativity bias, a tendency to focus on threats, problems, and what is missing. Gratitude is the intentional countermeasure. It trains the mind to scan for beauty, for goodness, for grace. The more we practice, the more we begin to see that our lives are, in fact, overflowing with riches. This felt sense of abundance is the direct antidote to the feeling of lack that drives the engine of consumerism. When your heart is full of gratitude for the present, the desperate need for a future purchase begins to dissolve. There is a well-known Zen story that illustrates this principle perfectly. A highly educated university professor, a man full of his own knowledge and opinions, went to visit a wise Zen master to inquire about the nature of enlightenment. The master welcomed him and offered him tea. As the master poured the tea, the professor began to speak at length about his own complex theories and ideas. The master continued to pour the tea, and soon the cup was full. But he did not stop. Tea began to overflow, spilling onto the table and the floor. The professor, alarmed, shouted, "Stop! The cup is full! No more will go in!" The Zen master calmly put down the teapot and looked at the professor. "Like this cup," he said, "you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? Our minds are often like this teacup. They are filled to the brim with desires, with the belief that we need more, with the noise of advertising, with the constant striving for a future happiness. We are so full of wanting that there is no space for contentment to arise. The practice of simplicity, of letting go of the constant need for more, is the act of emptying our cup. It is creating the inner space necessary for the peace and fulfillment we truly seek to be poured in. This shift in perspective leads us to a new definition of wealth. True wealth is not measured by the size of our bank account or the number of our possessions. True wealth is the richness of our inner lives. It is the unshakable peace of a mind that has cultivated equanimity. It is the boundless love of a heart that has practiced compassion. It is the clear-seeing wisdom that understands the nature of reality. It is the deep contentment that is happy with little. These are the only assets that can never be lost in a market crash, stolen by a thief, or eroded by time. They are our true and lasting treasure. We have now journeyed from our innermost selves to our relationships, to our engagement with the wider world of material culture. We have explored the wisdom that frees the mind and the practices that open the heart. The question that remains is a practical one. How do we weave all of this into the texture of our ordinary, busy, moment-to-moment lives? How do we practice not just when we are sitting on a meditation cushion, but when we are driving in traffic, waiting in line at the store, or washing the dishes? How, in short, do we make every step of our life the path itself? This brings us to the profound and beautiful art of integrating mindfulness into everyday life. We have journeyed through the vast inner landscapes of the mind and heart, exploring profound truths and cultivating beautiful, wholesome states. We have learned to look at the world through the lens of wisdom and to meet it with a heart full of compassion. Yet for many who walk a spiritual path, a frustrating gap can emerge. We may experience moments of profound clarity and peace while in formal meditation, sitting quietly on a cushion, only to find that peace evaporates the moment we stand up and re-enter the chaotic flow of our daily lives. There can feel like a disconnect between our meditation life and our real life. The purpose of this entire journey, however, is not to become an expert at sitting still in a quiet room. The purpose is to become a more awake, wise, and compassionate human being in every moment of our lives. The practice, therefore, cannot remain confined to the cushion. We must learn to close the gap, to weave our awareness into the very fabric of our existence. This is the art of informal practice, the profound discovery that every moment of our ordinary life can be a moment of meditation. To begin, we must redefine what we think meditation is. For many, the word conjures a specific image: someone sitting in the full lotus position, spine perfectly straight, in absolute silence. While this formal sitting practice is an invaluable and highly effective training ground, a kind of laboratory where we can study the mind in a controlled environment, it is only one form of meditation. The true essence of meditation is not about assuming a particular posture, but about assuming a particular quality of attention. That quality is a gentle, non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. Understood in this way, Any activity, literally anything at all, can be transformed into a profound practice. The goal is not to stop living in order to meditate. The goal is to use meditation to start living more fully, to be more present for the precious, fleeting moments of our one and only life. Let us begin with one of the most fundamental human activities, walking. We spend so much of our day moving from one place to another, yet we are rarely present for the journey. While walking, our bodies are in one place, but our minds are somewhere else entirely, lost in planning the future, ruminating on the past, or absorbed in the screen of a phone. Walking meditation, or kinhin, is the practice of bringing our body and mind together in the same place at the same time. The next time you are walking, whether it is down a hallway at work, through a park, or even just from your car to your front door, you can try this. Intentionally slow your pace just slightly. Then, bring your full and undivided attention to the soles of your feet. Feel the complex and subtle sensations, the feeling of your heel lifting off the ground, the leg swinging through the air, the heel making contact with the earth again, the shifting of weight as the rest of the foot follows. You can even use a silent mental note to anchor your attention, lifting, moving, placing. When your mind inevitably wanders off into thought, which it will, 1,000 times the practice is simply to notice this gently, without any self-criticism, and then softly guide your awareness back to the feeling of your feet touching the earth. In that moment of returning, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. You are transforming a mundane act of transit into a profound practice of being grounded, embodied, and present. We can bring this same quality of attention to another daily ritual, eating. So often, we eat on autopilot. We consume our food while watching television, answering emails, or driving, barely tasting a single bite. Mindful eating is an invitation to turn a meal into a sensory meditation, an act of deep connection and gratitude. You can practice this with your very next meal, or even with just a single bite of food. Before you begin, take a moment to look at the food. Notice its colors, its shapes, its textures. See it as if for the first time. Then, notice its aroma. Finally, take a bite, but chew slowly. Pay attention to the explosion of different flavors. Is it sweet, salty, sour, bitter? Notice the texture. Is it soft, crunchy, smooth? Try to eat your entire meal, or even just the first 5 minutes of it, in this way, in silence, with your full attention. As you do, you can also reflect with gratitude on all the causes and conditions that brought this food to your plate. The sun, the rain, and the soil that nourished it. The farmers who grew it, the people who transported it, and the person who prepared it. An act that was once a mindless refueling becomes a rich and joyful communion with the entire cosmos. This principle can be extended to even the most mundane chores we typically rush through or resent. Consider the act of washing the dishes. For most of us, this is something to be finished as quickly as possible, so we can get on to a more important activity. But as a mindfulness practice, it can become a sanctuary of peace. The next time you are at the sink, try to be fully present for the experience. Feel the warmth of the water on your skin. See the iridescent shimmer of the soap bubbles. Hear the sound of the sponge against the plate. Smell the clean scent of the soap. Your purpose is not just to get the dishes clean. Your purpose is to be fully present for the act of washing the dishes. As Thich Nhat Hanh famously said, if you are incapable of washing the dishes mindfully, you will also be incapable of drinking your tea mindfully. The way we do one thing is the way we do everything. By bringing our full presence to a simple, humble task, we discover that peace is not found in some future, more pleasant activity. It is available right here, right now, in the warm water and the shimmering bubbles. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly encapsulates this integration of practice into life. A young, eager student asks a wise old Zen master, "Venerable sir, what did you do before you became enlightened?" The master thought for a moment and replied, "Before I was enlightened, I chopped wood and I carried water." The student, expecting a more dramatic answer, was a bit confused, but he pressed on. "And what do you do now?" he asked, "now that you are enlightened?" The master smiled gently and replied, "Now that I am enlightened, I chop wood and I carry water." The external actions did not change. The master did not levitate or move to a grander temple. The transformation was entirely internal. The difference was in the quality of awareness he brought to each simple task. Before enlightenment, he chopped wood while thinking of other things. After enlightenment, he was fully present for the chopping of the wood. He was one with the swing of the axe, the scent of the pine, the feeling of the textured bark. The sacred was not found by abandoning his ordinary life, but by inhabiting it completely. This is the invitation being offered to us. Every moment of our day is a doorway back to the present moment. Every breath is an anchor. Every footstep is a chance to connect with the earth. Every sound is an invitation to listen. Every interaction is an opportunity to practice compassion. When we begin to live this way, the artificial distinction between our meditation time and the rest of our life begins to dissolve. Life itself becomes the meditation. Our practice is no longer something we do for 20 minutes a day. It becomes the way we are in every moment. Of course, this is a high ideal, and we will forget countless times a day. We will get lost in thought, swept away by emotion, and fall back into our old, unconscious habits. This is not a sign of failure. It is an inevitable part of the path. The journey is not about achieving a state of unbroken perfection. It is about learning, with infinite patience and kindness, how to begin again in every moment. This brings us to the final, and perhaps most important, aspect of a sustainable lifelong practice, the art of beginning anew. We have arrived at the final stage of our shared exploration. We have journeyed from the noisy, agitated surface of modern life, down into the deepest truths of our existence. We have examined the nature of suffering, the illusion of a separate self, and the intricate laws of cause and effect. We have trained our hearts in the sublime arts of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. We have learned to meet our inner demons with friendship, to bring wisdom into our relationships, and to find contentment in a world of endless craving. We have learned to find our meditation in every step, in every breath. It is natural, after such a long journey, to wonder, what now? Have I arrived? There can be a subtle expectation of a finish line, a day of graduation from suffering, a moment when we reach a permanent state of enlightenment and all our problems vanish forever. The final, and perhaps most compassionate piece of wisdom the path offers us is this: there is no finish line. The path is not a race to be won, but simply a road to be walked for the rest of our lives. This realization is not a cause for disappointment. It is a profound and beautiful relief. It frees us from the tyranny of achievement and invites us into the gentle, lifelong rhythm of practice. The first consequence of this understanding is that we must learn to embrace our own beautiful imperfection. As you walk this path, you will falter. It is an absolute certainty. There will be days or weeks or even longer when you completely forget to be mindful. You will get swept away by anger. You will be paralyzed by fear. You will fall back into old, unconscious habits of judging yourself and others. You will feel envy, impatience, and despair. It is essential to understand this clearly. This is not a failure. This is not a sign that the practice isn't working or that you are bad at it. This is the path. The path is not about floating in a state of perpetual bliss. The path is the moment-to-moment practice of waking up over and over again. The spiritual journey is not about never falling down. It is about how we learn to get back up, with kindness and without drama. Within our minds, there is often a harsh inner critic, a perfectionist who demands flawless progress. When we stumble, this voice is quick to condemn. You see, you failed again. You've been practicing for so long and you still get angry. You'll never get it. To listen to this voice is to add a second layer of suffering, the suffering of self-judgment, on top of the original difficulty. The practice is to cultivate a different inner voice, the voice of a kind and patient friend. This practitioner's mind simply notes what has happened with gentle clarity. For the last hour, the mind has been lost in worry. Now, it can come back to the breath. That is all. There is no story, no blame, no shame. It is the simple, compassionate recognition of being lost, and the gentle, firm intention of coming home. Self-compassion is not an optional extra on this path. It is the very fuel that allows us to walk it for a lifetime. You must resolve to be your own dearest and most forgiving friend on this journey. To sustain this practice for a lifetime, it is essential to cultivate what in the Zen tradition is called shoshin, or beginner's mind. Beginner's mind is the quality of approaching every experience with the openness, eagerness, curiosity, and lack of preconceptions of a true beginner. As the Zen master Shunryu Suzuki said, "In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind there are few." The moment we think we know something, the moment we believe we have mastered impermanence or have it all figured out, our heart and mind begin to close. The practice becomes stale, a mere repetition of ideas, rather than a living, breathing encounter with reality. Beginner's mind invites us to approach each day as a new discovery. When you sit to meditate, can you feel this breath as if you have never felt a breath before? When you look at a flower, can you see its color and texture without the label flower getting in the way? When you listen to your partner, can you hear their words without filtering them through the thick history of your past conversations? To cultivate beginner's mind is to remain a student of life, forever open, forever curious, forever humble. It keeps the journey vibrant and alive, a continuous unfolding of wonder rather than an accumulation of dead knowledge. Perhaps the most powerful image to hold for this lifelong journey is that of the lotus flower. The lotus is a symbol of purity, beauty, and enlightenment throughout the East. Its blossoms are immaculate, its fragrance divine. But where does this perfect flower grow? It does not grow on a pristine, sun-drenched mountaintop. The lotus flower rises up from the dark, thick, murky mud at the bottom of a pond. This is a profound teaching. The mud is our human life. It is our dukkha, our confusion, our fear, our anger, our sorrow, our mistakes, our traumas. The lotus flower is awakening, peace, compassion, and wisdom. The path to enlightenment does not involve trying to scrub all the mud off of us or trying to escape the pond and live on a cleaner mountain. The path lies in understanding that the mud itself is the source of our growth. Our difficulties are not obstacles to our practice. They are our practice. Every moment of anger is an opportunity to cultivate patience and compassion. Every experience of fear is a chance to investigate our attachments. Every time we get lost is a chance to practice the gentleness of returning. The mud is not to be despised. The mud is the very compost, the rich, dark, fertile ground from which the flower of our awakening will bloom. With this understanding, the idea of beginning anew becomes not a yearly resolution, but a moment-to-moment possibility. You do not need to wait for Monday morning or the first of the month to restart your practice. Every single breath is a new beginning. If you have just been lost in a painful story for an hour, your very next in-breath is a clean slate, an invitation from the universe to come home to the present moment, completely free from the baggage of the moment before. Every sunrise is a symbol of this truth. No matter how dark or difficult the night was, the sun rises, bathing the world in fresh, new light. We can learn to live with this same attitude. We can greet each morning with a renewed intention, letting go of yesterday's stumbles and recommitting ourselves to a day of awareness and kindness. Therefore, do not think of this path as a linear climb towards a distant peak. It is far more like a spiral. We will find ourselves circling back to the same core challenges again and again throughout our lives. Particular patterns of fear, our familiar triggers for anger, our deep-seated insecurities. It can be tempting to feel discouraged by this, to think we are making no progress. But if we look closely, we will see that each time we revisit a challenge, we do so from a slightly different vantage point. We meet it with a little more space, a little more wisdom, a little more self-compassion than we did the time before. The spiral is always ascending. This is the nature of true and lasting growth, patient, cyclical, and deeply compassionate. We have now walked this spiral together, from the outer noise to the inner stillness, and have learned to carry that stillness back out into the world. We have gathered the tools of wisdom and the skills of the heart. Now, with this understanding as our foundation, let us take one final look back at the whole of our journey, to distill its most vital essence, and to empower ourselves to walk forward into the rest of our lives with a quiet confidence, a clear mind, and a heart that is, at long last, truly at peace. We have arrived at the end of our long journey together. We began in a place that may feel familiar, amidst the restless noise and quiet anxieties of modern life. feeling adrift in a world that promises happiness, yet so often delivers distraction. From that place of searching, we embarked on an inner pilgrimage. We dared to look directly at the nature of our own dissatisfaction, diagnosing it not as a personal failure, but as the universal truth of dukkha. We were given a timeless map, the Four Noble Truths, and a clear path to walk, the Eightfold Path, which guided us not away from life, but more deeply into it. We learned to see the world as it truly is, a flowing, impermanent river of change. We searched for a solid, separate self to protect and promote, only to find the liberating truth of an interconnected, selfless process. And with this wisdom as our ground, we tended to the garden of our hearts, cultivating the boundless warmth of loving kindness, the tender strength of compassion, the selfless delight of sympathetic joy, and the unshakable, profound peace of equanimity. We learned to make friends with our deepest fears and to find our meditation not just on a cushion, but in every step and every breath of our ordinary lives. If there is a single, essential message to carry forth from our journey, it is this: peace is not something you must find, create, or achieve. It is not a distant destination you must struggle to reach. Peace is your fundamental nature. It is the vast, clear, open sky of awareness that is your birthright. Your thoughts, your emotions, your worries, your plans, the stories you tell yourself, these are like clouds. Some are dark and stormy, others are white and fluffy, but all of them are temporary weather patterns that drift through the sky of your mind. They are not the sky itself. The entirety of this practice, all the wisdom and all the techniques we have explored, is not about adding anything new to you. It is the simple, profound art of subtraction. It is the practice of gently letting go of your identification with the clouds so that you may come to know yourself as the sky. You are not the anger. You are the space in which anger arises and passes away. You are not the fear. You are the awareness in which fear is known and released. You do not need to build a peaceful state. You need only to cease disturbing the peace that is already and always here. And so, you have everything you need to walk this path right now, in this very moment. You do not need a special mantra, a different life, or a permission slip from anyone to begin. The path forward is paved with your own gentle, moment-to-moment attention. With every conscious breath you take, you are practicing. With every choice to respond with kindness instead of reactivity, you are practicing. With every moment you pause to feel your feet on the earth, you are practicing. Be patient with yourself. Be compassionate with your stumbles. This journey is not a steep and arduous climb, but a gentle, lifelong process of returning home. It is a returning to the stillness, the clarity, and the boundless, loving awareness that has been patiently waiting for you, right here, in the center of your own being, all along.